Hello everyone, welcome back. Tonight I've seen several requests from different people, various forms of the question, hey, trying to build a new WPF app, or hey, trying to figure out how you built one of your WPF apps. Can you kind of walk through and do an explanation? So tonight is going to be a highly caffeinated speed run of building an app. So I think we're going to do WPF. I think we're going to throw some database stuff in there just for fun, just to make it interesting. I've got a small app idea of something I've kind of wanted to build for a while. So you know what? We're going to build it. See how it goes. Hopefully it'll be quick and easy, and probably build something that hopefully becomes useful to me at the end. Okay, couple things first. There. Okay. Step one. For anybody who didn't catch this, so Intelitech's YouTube channel, there was a lunch and learn that I did called The Host with the Most, where I make a bunch of hostess jokes, but go through the .NET generic host. My opinion, this is going to be a great primer for what we're going to be looking at tonight, because I'm going to be leveraging and kind of standing on the shoulders of giants of a lot of different frameworks and setups, and I'm going to show you how I set them all up. I'm not going to do necessarily a deep dive into each of those things, but the generic host is going to play a pivotal role. So if you kind of want to understand why we're leveraging, that will be a good primer. Next up, something completely unrelated and fun. There is a YouTuber, Sebastian, as you can see, lots of views, lots of stuff. He has this really cool coding challenge that came across. Now, I personally enjoy playing chess, and I obviously enjoy coding. So when this thing came out, it kind of caught my attention, and it looked fun. I'm planning on building it out. He's got this coding challenge set up, and I believe the link's in the description. Yeah, we could just go here real quick. Boom. You can go through, fork this repository. When you pull it down, it's a very simple one. Fire up the solution. You can F5 launch it. You're off to the races. His YouTube video goes all the way into it. But the idea is your goal is to design and build a little chess bot. There's a couple really key rules to be aware of. The biggest one is only these namespaces are allowed. Okay, so, and even within the system link namespace, you're not allowed as parallel. Effectively, he's taken away a lot of the threading. You're not allowed to reach out to the file system or networks related stuff. So you can only get so much. The other big limitation around this is the, well, there's a little memory limitation. That's kind of an issue. Where is the bot brain capacity? Yeah. So this is a bot brain capacity, and you'll note the measured tokens may not exceed 1024, and you can dive into the code to see how he's measuring tokens, but this is basically looking at Roslyn tokens. So even though name size doesn't count, the number of tokens in your C# as the compiler sees it does. 1024 is not a very big number. So when he says tiny chessbots, he's not joking. These are going to be tiny. You are not going to bring in like some of the popular Alpha Zero Stockfish, etc., and pull them into here. That's just not going to work. The amount of code and memory needed to run one of those things is significantly above what this is here. So the idea is to try to come up with something clever and short. So I don't know if I'll come up with anything clever, but I will come up with a submission. That's what I'm committing to. I will submit something. We will see what, and we'll see if it makes it in. I've got a clever idea on how to kind of cheat this 1024 limit and be able to encode a little bit more. Maybe we'll do a little on that if people find this interesting. But being able to cheat this limit but not having any sort of algorithm to put behind it doesn't really do you a whole lot, because at the end of the day, it's all about what code can you write. Okay, so there are a couple apps that I have done in the past, specifically these couple streams here. So there's these are ones that I point people to a lot, where I kind of walk through. This one of Learn WPF is a good one for anybody who wants to understand how things work. This Simply Budget one is kind of putting a lot of those things into practice. And then I've got another stream on the MVVM toolkit, and all of the greatness that came in the 8.0 release of that. The 8.1 thing, there's been incremental things, but the 8.0 release of the toolkit was really the big moment for it, when all the cool stuff dropped and the source generators, all the things. And so I have this app out here that I've worked on, and it is a simplistic application that's designed as a budgeting application, but it is built for my users, which are me, and me. So if other people want to use it and derive joy out of having it, great. Every bit of functionality I've built has been explicitly for me and to make my life happy, because I believe in managing my money and I would like to know where all the dollars are going and have a plan. So this is my way of doing that. Yes, there are other budgeting applications, but darn it, I'm a developer. We build stuff. So I had considered going through this application, but I thought there's a lot in here that's really specific to me and how I did things. And this application is also a little bit old. I recently updated it this last week with some of my .NET templates, trying to get it up to what I would consider good, or back up to kind of where my current standards are for it. There's a lot of old stuff sitting around, right? Like, this is not necessarily set up the way I would do it if I was starting from scratch, but I can start moving it that direction. So I figured, let's go through and build a new application from scratch. Just ground zero. I haven't done nothing yet. So we're going to go from ground zero. But what are we building? So I have a small addiction to Mountain Dew and another small addiction to board games. I enjoy doing them and have a group that I play with every other week. It's great. We get together. I've built myself a table specifically to play board games on. It's great. And I've also started to acquire an okay number of games. Enough that if somebody were to ask me to rattle off every game that I owned, I'm probably going to miss several, because I've got enough that I'm going to forget about. The count has now exceeded my brain capacity, so that's how many I have. But I also enjoy, like, board games are meant to be played. I do not mind loaning them out to people, and so oftentimes people will come over, borrow games for game nights that they're doing and whatnot, which is great, except for my brain capacity is already full, and so I often forget who I've loaned what to, and so sometimes that comes back to bite me because I have trouble remembering. So that's my plan. I basically want to build a small library system for my board games, ideally with a nice little checkout thing built into it so I can keep track of who I've loaned board games out to and when. That's what we're going for. And we're going to probably back that with a little SQLite database. So let's build it. Okay, so step one, we need a name. Good news, I've already kind of come up with this. There is a board game called Monopoly. Most board gamers love to hate on Monopoly, so we are going to just continue with that. So Rentopoly sounds like a great name because we're renting board games. Okay, so new directory. That's not what I want. Nope. Rentopoly. There we go. Okay, so we are in here. So next thing we're going to do. I do not want to think too hard, so I have my .NET new templates that I absolutely adore. And then specifically my WPF solution one is the one that I want. So we are going to go .NET new Kaboo WPF. Oh, that is scary that the IntelliSense is figuring it out. Great. Make me a new thing. Lovely. Great. Open that up. That's on the wrong monitor. Try again. Okay. So we've got a brand new solution and we're off to the races. So we're going to see how quick we can go through and build all of this out. Okay, so there is a lot of stuff kind of baked into my .NET new template. I won't necessarily go into everything, but a few things that I'm going to call out right away. One, this is using the directory packages.props. So all of your NuGet packages end up here, right? And then each of your projects only go through and say which NuGet packages they want, but all the versioning and stuff is managed here. Don't panic if the XML scares you. You can still just right-click Manage NuGet Packages on your solution or projects. It works the same way. Visual Studio is hip to this whole thing. I've got some weird issue that I don't understand why my .NET New template has got older stuff. I thought it was auto revving. Maybe I just need to install a new version of my template. Maybe I need to merge some dependent bot things, whatever. Either way, we're just going to rev our stuff up to latest. And then we're going to F5 launch. Right. So we are going. Come on, compile. I know I just revved all your NuGet packages. You're confused. And app should start up. And of course, it's on the wrong screen. There we go. So file, it's got a clear count and an exit. We can click, 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 click. When we get to 5, it disables the button. Clear it, we go back. File, exit. That's the sum total of what you get in the template. Simple enough to be easy to understand, complicated enough to where we can have some logic and whatnot built in. There's view models. The only other thing I'm going to call people's attention to is inside of the app.xaml.cs. When you go through, what are you complaining? Are you complaining of a spelling error? Of course it's not a word. Okay, I do not want to deal with this. Ignore. Okay, there we go. Inside of the app.xaml.cs, I have done a little magic in here to spin up a generic host. So my comment earlier about checking out that video, if you want to know more about all of the cool things you can do with generic host, that video will go into all of them. This is the setup for it inside of WPF. There's a bunch of pieces to this. You have to override main. You have to kind of change some of the stuff with your app.xaml, or just run the template, right? You get this set up out of the gate. The really important part here is it goes through and creates the main window for you and then calls run on this guy. This means that your main window.xaml doesn't need to have a default constructor anymore. Okay? So that's the big change. Your main window no longer needs to have a default constructor. It can take in dependencies like view models and do this kind of stuff. And you're off to the races. So, yeah, and this is just showing you an example of a relay command because I was trying to figure out how to bundle stuff in. So there you go. That is the biggest thing right here, is that we now have dependency injection through the vast majority of our WPF. Okay, so let's go through. Let's actually spin up some databasey stuff first, I guess. We'll start at the bottom and work our way up. Why not? I think, maybe. Yeah, we'll start at the bottom and work our way up. That sounds like fun. Okay, so ChatGPT help me name it. Boom, here. So for anybody who's not familiar with it, EF Core. This is, so Entity Framework is Microsoft's ORM, so Object Relational Mapper. If that term is new to you, it effectively just means the system that's able to take data in a database and convert it into C# objects. That's what we want, right? There's nothing overly fancy, but how you do that conversion, and I'm kind of simplifying a lot of it, but that's all it is. If you haven't done anything with databases, don't panic. If you've opened up Excel, you've gotten yourself pretty close. You can almost think of databases like spreadsheets, right? Each sheet has columns and rows. We want to pull some of that data out. We want to put it together. Away we go. So we are going to be using EF Core 7 for this, and Entity Framework allows you to plug in different database backends into it. Now, Entity Framework is a very leaky abstraction. What that means is, even though Entity Framework tries to hide away from you what database you're going against, the different database providers have different capabilities, and it's fairly rare that you swap out that database backend and have to make 0 changes. Sometimes it happens, not that often, right? So it's like, people are always like, oh, you can swap your database backends. Practically, I almost never do that. It's pretty rare that you ever change out your database backend. And 2, even when you do it, there's usually some cleanup. It's not bad. It definitely is an abstraction layer, but just be aware that that is a thing, and I don't put a lot of stock in. However, it is a very nice interface to be able to interact with the database because you don't have to think so much about the database stuff. You can focus a lot more on your code. Okay, so I thought this thing had a getting started guide or something. Did it not? Yeah, it's something like this. Blah, blah, blah. SQL Server, blah, blah, blah. We're not going to do any of this. Well, we'll do some of this. We're not going to do all of this. So one thing we will need is the Entity Framework Global Tool. I believe I already have it. Yeah, boom, done. But if you don't, you will need this .NET tool install because you will need .NET EF later. What I think I'm going to do instead is I'm just going to come over to my Simply Budget app because I recently upgraded it to leverage the same setup as before. And I'm just going to pull in these packages here. So for people who can't see, N80 Framework, Core, SQLite, and Design. So the SQLite package, we're just going to go here. Let's see, spelling's hard. EN, let's see, EN comes before EX last I checked. Boom, done. And then I'm just going to go manage NuGet package to make sure I don't have any updates. Great. And then I want to come over here and I want to just bring both of you guys in to here. Let's see. Package reference. Include, I'm kind of debating whether it would have been quicker to do this versus just the NuGet package manager. Really 50-50 at this point. Come on. Thank you. Good auto code button. I approve. Okay, go find the packages, install them, do the needful. You can see now that I've added, it's doing the package restore, and poof, we've got dependencies and we're off to the races. Lovely. Okay. Okay, N80 Framework, is there anything you want to be smart about doing it? Upgrading to the latest, blah, 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 blah. Your first app, great. We're just going to skip console. They're going to do this. Okay, here's the important part. So for interacting with the database, you need to set up a couple things. One of them is going to be a DB context. The important things here is your DB context needs to derive from the DB context class and have some sort of name to go along with this. So in our case, I usually bury these things under like a data namespace. So we're going to start there just so that there's clear separation. New class, great. Let's call it game context. Board game context. I like board game context. Yeah, we'll do that. Boom. Great. Lovely. File scope the namespace. Public the class. Learn how to spell public, which is important. DB. Okay, really, autocode? That was not even close. I type in DB and you switch to #if. How about not? Okay. Let's see. Let's do. How about Karnak running? Move Karnak up. Okay, so we've got that. Now, the next part is really unfortunate. So this example that they give is probably perfectly fine. However, it's not what you want to use. If we go and look at EF, Core, C#, nullability. So the other thing that my project goes and turns on is C# nullable reference types, which is great. The problem being that in order to actually make all of this work, their getting started guide favors simplicity, which is fine. As long as you understand it favors simplicity. I prefer things that show a little bit more of putting all the pieces together, and I don't like that it gets you started down the wrong path. So this kind of goes into it. Navigation properties, DB context, DB sets. So here's the important part right here. So on your DB context, when you are creating your DB set, this right here with a regular auto property is what the getting started guide shows you to do. What you actually want to do is this. All right. So, yeah. So you can also go through and suppress the warning, and I personally abhor this idea. So I much prefer this approach because you shouldn't be assigning that anyway. Yeah, some of the guidelines in here I just straight up disagree with. Okay, so we're gonna go here, and now we need some actual entities. So in this case, let's do a public class board game. Okay, and let's see, we're gonna need public int ID because every board game needs an ID. How about public string name? Wow, really? Okay, what else you want to tell me? Description, sure. We could probably add all kinds of stuff to this at the moment. I mean, you're doing pretty good so far, Copilot. What else you got? Min playtime. Nah, I always hate the playtime metrics. They're always wrong, and I don't like playtime being an int either. So, no, you're done, Copilot. We're going to stop there. That's enough. That's enough to make a point. Boom, 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 boom. And then we're going to call this board games. Okay. There is a lot of convention-based stuff that occurs inside of Entity Framework. Things like the magical ID property will automatically get mapped. When it sees an ID property, Entity Framework goes, oh, I know what to do. You would like me to go through and have this be the key for board games. Great, perfect. There's also a lot of inference when we get to foreign key relationships. So let's do that. Let's create a rental class. Should it be a rental or a game rental? No, we'll just call it a rental. Sure. Come on, Copilot, write the class for me. So disappointed in you, Copilot. I had such high hopes. Anything else you'd like to do? No. Public string, how about rented to? Or how about loaned to? Maybe we should actually now call this a... I don't know if rental is the right word. You know what? Because I'm using loan to and rental, but whatever. Loaned on sounds great. And then, yeah, returned on. That seems good. And it can be nullable because, you know, might still be out. Cool. Then we've got a history of who borrowed what when. Oh, but we actually need to create a foreign key reference to board game. Really? You're going to just... Okay. What's the other property you need? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Okay. So this guy becomes nullable. And then public int board game ID. Now, I've intentionally named this very specifically. And if we come back over here, I think there is a... Create a model, generated index. Where's the foreign key stuff? Manage database, query data, save data. Jared, welcome! Yes, I'm doing well. Hopefully you are doing well yourself. It's been a while since we've seen you. Where the heck is the foreign key? Relationships, right. Right. Okay, so in this case, we have a one-to-one relationship, right? So there's various ones. In this case, a rental has a required one-to-one relationship. Every rental actually probably shouldn't be a one-to-one. It should be a one-to-many. Required. How about where's the one-to-many? Oh. If you're on the one-to-one list, you only see one-to-one ones. There we go. Required one-to-many. There we go. So here's how you actually set it up. So in our case, they call it a blog. We have our blog is actually called rental. They call it a post. Our post is called board game. So this is what you need here, right? In order to do it. So what I was showing was a one-to-one. We aren't going to do that. So axe that idea, boom. And we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're going to go with board games, boom. Bippity boppity booyah. And then, there we go. And then this one here, I guess it's, now that I say that it's one-to-many, I think it's actually many-to-many, because can a game... Even though a game can really only be rented out one at a time, it can have multiple rentals, especially if the rentals are going to be returned at some point. It just can't be loaned out twice at the same time. That would be a little bit harder. Yeah, so many-to-many makes this a little more interesting, and the let's see, what do we got? Post tags, post tags. Uh, yeah, so we might go this route instead. And you'll note here, this one has already immediately changed the structure of what it needs to be. So that's exciting. Let's go here. We're going to do target type new because reasons, and then public list rental rentals get no. Come on, Copilot, you're better than this. You are better than this. Okay. And then no, what? Okay, doing it. So one other thing to be aware of with nullable reference types and Entity Framework. Entity Framework will actually leverage your nullable reference types to determine whether the column in your database table that it creates for your schema, whether it is nullable or not. So now that we have this, let's do here, public, yeah, that. Okay, so we're gonna, that's fine, that's fine. Let's move these things into their own files real quick. And then let's actually go and spin up the database. Right? So there's that, there's that, there's that. Okay, so how do we create a database? So we have started with did I close it down? I must have. EF Core C# migrations. The migrations inside of EF Core are one of the preferred ways of being able to stand up your database. Now, it's worth noting, depending on what you are doing, you can actually leverage these migrations to either do the database schema changes inside of your code. Some people like to leverage them to generate SQL scripts so that they can work them through as part of a pipeline as well. That is an option available, so just be aware. For very simplistic applications like what we're going to do here, this is going to be a pretty simple setup. So this is why we needed the .NET tools from before. .NET EF migrations add, and we'll create one. And then when you do this, this will actually stand up and then change the migrations. The other thing that you can do is rather than using the commands to go through and do it, we can actually trigger the migration inside of our application. But let's actually get the migration stood up first of all. So I think what we're going to have to do, though, is when we run this, I'm pretty confident it's just going to straight fail. So first of all, we need to be in the same directory as the project, or we end up having to specify it. So we're going to just do EF migration add initial create. We should probably make a Git repo out of this at some point. We should make a Git repo. That way we can like checkpoint stuff. Yeah. So this is the failure we expected. So no database provider has been configured. So it's saying, hey, you're telling me to like gen stuff up for doing databasey work, but you haven't told me how to actually do this. Right? And then more importantly, it's saying I haven't actually figured out how to do all of this resolution. So I don't know that there's the one right way of going through and handling this. So there are multiple ways to go through and deal with it. And one of the options available to you is this design time factory that you can spin up. And this is what I did inside of my Simply Budget application. As the name implies, this is design time. This is not your runtime level stuff. This is things that you use when you're designing your database, spinning your migrations and whatnot. This is also especially important if your DB context, if you overload the constructor, because it needs to be able to instantiate an instance of your DB context in order to know what to be able to do with this thing. The error message does give you several options to be able to figure out what to do, and then add all of that stuff in. Let's see. How do we want to go about doing this? I'm a little torn. I kind of want to just do everything all at once. Is that too much? Is that too much? Yeah, I don't think it's too much to go through and do, because this, yeah, and this is where some people have looked at the Simply Budget application and gone, ooh, please go through and explain. It's like, there's a lot that's happening in here that isn't normal. Like, I wouldn't necessarily tell people to set up their database this way. This is kind of yucky. And it's kind of an artifact of what I was doing from before. So let's actually read this guy through. Yeah, I think we might just do the on configuring and call it a day. That's probably the simplest option. So let's go in here. If we go here and go override on configuring, boom, right? We come in here and we go options build. Wow. Thank you, Copilot. That was a little too easy. Okay. Make sure you save your file. That is important. Run migration. Ooh, so maybe I should actually update my tool. .NET tool, is it update or upgrade? I can't remember, one of these two. There we go. Sweet. Okay, now we're updated. Okay, so what do? We ran the tool, and now we've got some extra files inside of our project. So we've got this initial create script that it built for us that derives from migration. And you know that these migrations have both an up and then a down. And you can see you can kind of read through and kind of guess your way through it. Okay, it's going to create me a table for board games, create me a table for rentals. It's figured out that I've got this many-to-many relationship, and in order to do that, it needs a mapping table in the middle. So it goes, I got you, figures it out and says, let me build all that up. Let me do the foreign keys. Let me manage all of that. It's like, thank you. I didn't want to think about any of that. And it went through and built it straight up for me. And I think in the interest of simplicity, again, when and how you upgrade your database, this is going to be specific to your application and how you want to manage your infrastructure. Because as your app advances, you are going to want to add things to your database. Your schema will change over time. The figuring out when to do the database update, if you do it, as I'm about to show you, as part of app launch, that could be problematic if you have a shared database across multiple users. So just be aware of that. Oftentimes in that situation, you want to either not have your app go directly to the database, put a web service in the middle. You want to do your migrations as part of a pipeline deployment so that everybody has it, yada, yada, yada. Let's see, Jared, what's the thought process behind the data directory in Simply Budget? I've seen it before, but it seems like a catch-all for DB related stuff. It really is. So oftentimes when people create a data namespace, or sometimes people go to the extreme lengths of making an entire project for data, the idea is that they are trying to put only POCOs related to database stuff, meaning there should be very little to no logic here. This should just be related to data and persistence. So it's really just putting in that layer of separation for my own sanity. But you are right. And in a lot of cases, I hate catch-all namespaces where it's like all the things go here. But in this case, because of how EF works, we are going to write code inside of this data namespace, not necessarily based upon C# best structure, but based upon what we need EF to do. So we're using C#, but at the end of the day, we're using C# as a way to drive a database, and so we got to play by EF's rules. Okay, so and then if we come back to our app, let's start with this. So if we come in here, we can go with services, add DB context, great. And then this is going to be, what is it? Board game context, bippity boppity booyah, boom. Okay. So this builds all of this up. And then if you were working on an API, would you have a separate directory for repositories as well then? If you're implementing the repository pattern, I generally abhor a repository's namespace, a utility's namespace. There's a couple others that I'm blanking on. And usually at that point, once you get into businessy logic stuff, which generally your repository pattern is designed to have methods that are making purpose-built queries, because they're purpose-built, I usually start breaking those apart into logical verticals of, this is related to this feature or this set of functionality, and start separating them that way. I really hate catch-all namespaces. The thing with this is, at the end of the day, your DB context is going to have to reference all these other things. So if you end up moving like some of these POCOs into a gaming namespace, for example, you're going to then have your DB context having to kind of reach across all those namespaces, because it's going to have to suck all those things back in order to declare them. Okay, so we got that. We added this in, and then we need to pull back out the migration. That's what we were doing. Migrations. I might need another drink of dew just so that I can think straight. Because this guy here, gonna ignore that for the moment. Where the heck did I put my migrations in this thing? Probably should have looked this up before doing it. It's got to be in here somewhere. Wow, where did I put my migrations? Can't remember where I put my migrate call. I think we're just going to do it at the root and call it a day. Oh, app.xaml, it is in here. Oh, I just didn't scroll down far enough. Okay, got it. Okay, so I did it on startup. Got it. Okay, boom. Gonna steal a little code. It's not stealing if you steal from yourself. I don't like where I did it in Simply Budget, so I'm gonna do it up here. And I don't like how I did... Actually, I don't like most of my code, so... yeah, we're just gonna not do any of this. That sounds dumb. Great. Okay, there we go. So, in this case, we want to get our DB context back out of our DI container. So, host.services get required service. And we're going to go here, we're going to go here, and we're going to go board game context. Boom. And then we're going to do this. Okay. And then why do you not have... There. Using statement, migrate exists. Okay. So there are a couple methods that are hidden underneath this database that are, I think, worth calling out. There is ensure created, and then there's migrated. You do not want to be mixing these together. Ensure created will ensure the database is created, but won't run your migrations for you. That's not really what you want. So migrate is our friend. And in this case, we're actually going to do migrate, and we're doing it synchronously, not asynchronously. And it is worth noting that this is going to hang this. I'm sorry. Ooh, excuse me. This is going to hang the startup of our application while our database is being created. In this case, because the database is SQLite, it's local on disk, I'm not really worried about it. You may consider putting this elsewhere. Let's see. Jared, I'm used to seeing directories as controllers, services, repositories, etc. But I've also seen those organized by model, rentals, rental controller, rental service, repository. So do you have any links or best practices on organizational decisions like this? So I will warn you, everything you find around those is going to be... There's not widespread agreement. So I'll preface it with that. So take everything you're going to see with a grain of salt. Some of those things are done as a requirement. So things like your controller's namespace came about because of ASP.NET and MVC in particular that had a lot of convention-based stuff about where it's going to go find things. Like when MVC is looking up the views, it's really particular about how you structure your namespaces and folders, because that's what it uses. And as long as you know the convention, everything works. And the moment you violate the convention, everything ends. And so some people will put the argument out, well, you have to do it this way. It's like, well, you don't, but as soon as you break from the convention, your world just got a whole lot harder for very little gain. So be aware that some of those types of namespaces are potentially needed based upon your framework, and in a lot of cases you kind of have to let the framework drive. If you're going to use a framework, kind of by definition, you play by the framework's rules. And if you don't, you're just taking on the pain yourself. And then why are you using the framework? However, in general, my preferred approach is to organize by feature or vertical. I, Kevin, have waffled on this over the years. So if you look at older code, old Kevin was an idiot. I've said that twice now today. That's not a good sign. But it's one thing that I've noticed is I used to create like those utility namespaces, the services namespaces, the repositories namespaces, because it made sense. It's like I always put all my services here. The problem is if you put all of your services in a services namespace, your services namespace has literally no meaning left. Because if every service is in there, what's the point? Like there's no organization. It's kind of like just putting all of your icons on your desktop. So I have found the bigger, so for the most part, it's stylistic. The one area where I would argue it's not stylistic and starts to introduce bugs is when refactors come in. When everything lives in the same namespace like that, it's really hard to detect, even on code reviews, when you've got a bad order of dependencies. So for example, ASP.NET Core, there's kind of this order of operations, right? Like the controller's at the top, the controller talks to the service does the business logic and talks to the data layer, right? Everything goes top down. And if you add a reference from your data layer going back up to a controller, that would be a red flag, right? Everything works in its respective areas. When everything kind of gets bundled into one namespace, it's really hard to detect when you have those arrows that are going the wrong direction, because rather than having the clearly defined lines, everything's kind of just between the lines. And so you get this kind of little spaghetti going on between the lines. And that's the one place where it starts to bite. Like refactors start to get hard. Not always. Sometimes people can organize their code and mentally process it and it's fine. It's not a big deal, but it can be. Past Kevin did that, and past Kevin has been bit by that enough that current Kevin doesn't like what past Kevin did. What would be an example of feature-driven organization? Perfect question. So, for example, in this particular application that we are building out, I'm envisioning kind of logically two areas. One area where we go and do a board game rental, where we basically kind of, fill out the card like what you used to have to do in the library to say, I'm borrowing this thing. Great. Perfect. I'm also picturing a second area that's more of like a board game catalog, right? Going back to the library idea, we go back in, shoot, what was that thing called in the library with the cards where you could use that to go and look up books? I don't remember. I was forced to learn it a long time ago, and I've clearly not committed it to memory. It's one of the things that fell out the back. But kind of those two logical areas. So I think in many cases, it really has to be driven by what exactly it is that you're building. I'm trying to think of one of the last ones we did. For the shameless self-promotion real quick. For the essential C# setup here, right? So for those people who haven't seen it, this is live. It's wonderful. Yes, I'm involved in it. Yes, it's awesome. If we go and look at that, because it's partly open source, the website's open source. And I don't know if we've actually done a good job of this yet. No, we haven't. We've done an absolutely horrible job of it. So this is a good example of what not to do. But there are a few features that we want to implement kind of coming along with this. You can imagine potentially breaking it up, like search could theoretically be one of the feature level areas, right? Where I'm going to build that out. Sometimes people will put things like navigation as a feature, and I think that can depend on the app, because sometimes the moment you have a feature that has to sprawl into other areas, you start to run into a bit of a problem. And I'm not terribly opposed to the idea of needing, and like at some point you do need something that is able to reach across into multiple namespaces and grab things. Dewey Decimal Classification. Thank you. Yes. See, I don't think I can remember how to use it though at this point. I was homeschooled. We spent a lot of time in libraries, which was good. You can learn a lot, especially when you're at the library in the middle of the day and no one's there. You've got free reign of the place. My wife looked it up. Yeah, which was great. And you learned a lot about from librarians and whatnot. This was back when the librarians would, like, if there was only like 6 people in the library, they took an active interest in helping you with whatever you needed. It was great. You had to do a research paper, show up at the library at like 9 a.m. in the middle of the week during school days. Best time in the world. Plenty of time to get whatever you need. Yeah, anyway, so let's carry forth and then we'll see if we can do this. So I think this gets us to here, this gets us to here. Let's go. Let's just run. One, I want to make sure A works at this point because it really should, and we're gonna just make sure it does. But we're gonna have to kind of do it with breakpoints since we haven't written a UI for it yet. So let's go here. And I don't remember what we called the sucker. Rentopoly DB. Okay, so it doesn't exist yet. Perfect. And here, and we go step, step, step. We think for a moment, and now if I go and look over here, I see Rentopoly DB. Goal! We win! Yes! We've got a database. World's a happy place. And we're off to the races. So the SHM and WAL files, don't worry about. Those are SQLite thingamabobbers. This is like your write-ahead log. I'm trying to remember what SHM is for, but whatever. Okay, so we've got a database. We built it, but unfortunately we have no UI for it. So let's actually build out a UI for this. So I'm thinking the first things first is building out the rental portion. Or maybe we should build out a way to put the board games into a classification. I'm torn. I don't know what to do. Yeah, I don't know what to do. So here's what. Let's just do the top level stuff then first. So I'm gonna go grab, because we can cheat. I'm gonna go grab the material design demo app. We're just going to poach some code out of it. So you'll note that my .NET new template very much leverages material design because, darn it, it's a great library and you should use it. I want the navigation rail is, I think, what I want. Snack bar hints. Under tabs. There. Okay. Field style. Global content. Where's the navigation rail? In here, navigation rail. That's what I'm after. Got it. I like this. This, like, there's multiple ways you could set up your application's navigation stuff. I'm kind of partial to doing something like this. I really like this type of setup. So the wonderful part is the material design library. We come over here. We go, yeah, I kind of like copy. Great. And then we're going to come in here. So our main window, and we're just going to collapse that because I don't want to look at it. Right now it just has a grid. The top row is for the menu. We'll leave the menu for now. I don't know if we're actually going to need it. Let's get rid of the clear command. We'll leave exit sitting there for now. And then we've got a stack panel. That's all the stuff. We don't want the stack panel. That's garbage. Boom. Tab control. Oh boy. Yeah. So stop yelling. You're unhappy. I get it. Okay, so for starters, we're going to get rid of the card because I don't really want this thing wrapped in a card. I just want the tab control. Yeah, I get that. You're unhappy. Add the namespace, darn it, and stop being unhappy. Okay. Happier? Okay. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, that has a lot of stuff. Let's fire it up and make sure it at least looks something like the demo, and then we'll beat it into submission. Okay, great. We got something going here. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to just set you to this. Actually, here's what we could do. can just go topmost true. Cool. Now you stay on the side and just sit there while we edit you. Okay, so step one, I think what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're just going to get rid of some tabs, because at present, I think I only need 2 tabs. Perfect. Done. And then vertical content alignment, I don't think we want that. Kind of want it to just fill the entire back. And the issue here is this guy is sitting in grid row 1. So he's being forced to the top. So we need to make this guy grid row 1. There we go. Not sure I like the menu anymore. Yeah, I don't like the menu anymore. We're going to get rid of the menu. So let's just get rid of this. Get rid of this. We'll leave the bottom row, I guess, for now. But this now becomes row 0. Okay. Let's see. So this one here. Let's see. Is there like a game? Gamepad. Games. That'll work. That'll work for now. Let's see. And then let's call this, rather than all files, we'll call it, game catalog. That is horrible. And we don't need the width and height set to auto. That's kind of stupid. That's the defaults. So we're just gonna blow those away really quick. Let's see. Wrap. Text wrapping, wrap. Not sure I like that. Let's see. What's it? Text alignment. Centered. That's better. Not sure I like that quite as much, but what happens if we make this bigger? Yeah, let's make it bigger. Maybe we can go bigger than that. That's too big. That's too big. Jared, are you British? You're gonna... So one, I know I can't spell. Oh. But you are correct that I can't spell. But yes, we're going with American English for the moment. Just because. And then this is content stuff, so we're gonna go with text to do. All right, so we're gonna slap something in there at some point. If people are unfamiliar and they're seeing my XAML bounce around a lot, this is the... We go and look. This is the XAML styler extension. I very much like it. The one thing I wish I could do is turn it on and off per repository. Color right. Oh my. You saw Resharper. So Resharper wasn't in the installed list. This is in the online. You'll note it has a download button. Not actually in the installed list of extensions. But you did see it. You are correct. Okay, so now we need something like, I don't know, car rental. I kind of like the key approach. Yeah, let's do that, and then let's bump you up to like 35 as well. And then rather than recent, we're going to call you rental, but we're going to spell rental with an N. Great. Let's see. Text. Rental to do. Boom. Bippity boppity booyah. Clock icon maybe? Oh, I like the clock idea. Let's see. Clock. Clock outline, clock plus. Actually, I kind of like clock plus with the idea that this is adding in a rental, and maybe we'll do a different page for viewing them. Yeah, I like that. And maybe we'll call this as new rental. Yeah. Let's see. Text wrapping wrap. Okay. And then and then we got to do text alignment center. That just looks better. Okay, we might need to do a little margin or whatnot on these guys. Kind of want to do a little. No. Just decided I don't like it. Okay. Somehow we've managed to lose this guy. No idea how. This is probably the live edit and continue. No, but I do like your clock idea, Jared. Okay, so now this is a good question about what to do. There are multiple ways people approach this. So the way it's set up at present with my template is there is a main window view model. Now, the way I have structured my main window, I may not want main window to have a view model. I may actually want to have each of these things be logically separated areas of my app. And this is a judgment call, right? Do you want one thing? Do you want multiple things? We're going to do multiple because if in your app you want to do one, just do what we're about to do, but only do it once. Okay? So I'm going to show two, and if you want one, that's how it's going to go. So we're going to do a new namespace, and I think we're gonna make a rentals namespace, right? And here we go. So this is going to be, to answer your question from earlier, Jared, this is going to be an idea of logical separation by feature, right? We're gonna have one feature that's around doing the board game rentals, one that's around, like the board game catalog. So we're going to do add rental view model, okay? And file scope the namespace, public key the class. Okay, next thing. So step one, observable object, okay? Once again, I am not going to spend a ton of time diving into how to use the MVVM toolkit. I'm just going to show it in action. So if this looks like an awesome way to do MVVM to you, go check out my video on the CommunityToolkit.MVVM. It's wonderful and awesome. Okay, we got a new view model. Let's see. So let's think about what this thing is going to need to do. It's going to need to have a command to add a rental into our database. That's what we need, right? So we could go through and build this out, but a better thing, we're just going to show everything, right? Let's do test-driven development, right? This one's kind of easy because we kind of know exactly where we're going with this. So we're going to do this. So add rental view model test. Boom. Bippity boppity booyah. Bippity boppity booyah. Got this. Okay, so fact. Public gonna be async task because I know we're gonna do a database. Let's see. On submit with valid data adds new rental to database. Boom. Okay. A good unit test starts with its name. I've just given all three of the important things for the unit test. What the thing is we're going to test, there's going to be a submit command. When the view model's got valid data, so we're not going to test an error condition. This is going to be the happy path. And then we want to verify that it actually puts something in the database. Right? That's what we're going for. So we are going to start with AutoMocker because that is how I start my tests. Because it's wonderful. Okay. We are going to need an add rental view model. I prefer to just call it VM. And no, we don't want to invoke the constructor directly. No, the whole point of AutoMocker is so that we can do create instance. Now, is create instance adding anything? At the moment, absolutely not. And this is the wrong class. So it turns out if you don't do the right class, that doesn't do anything for you. Boom. Okay, there we go. So the reason it doesn't do anything is because create instance is designed to decouple your unit test from your view model's constructor. But our constructor is about to start taking dependencies. For example, it's going to need a database, right? We don't want to think about that, right? So let's keep going. Act. We want to do something like await VM submit command execute async. That doesn't exist. So let's go make it exist. Okay, so relay command, let's see, private async task on submit. Boom. Now we've got it. We do the source generator thing. Everyone's happy. Boom. Source generator. I will warn you, if you are using JetBrains products, in theory, the latest version is supposed to fix this. They are really bad about picking up that auto-generated source. So if you are from JetBrains, please go fix that. I have some colleagues that would love it if you would do so. Okay, so now the question is, how do we do this assert? Because the whole idea is we want to make sure that we're actually getting data out of the database. Now, this gets to be a little bit tricky, Now, we're already using SQLite, so we could use the SQLite in-memory database. The problem with the in-memory database is it goes poof when the last connection disappears, which isn't great, right? We kind of like to make sure that we are able to keep track of that. So, where's a good example in here? So we are just going to steal some of my code because it's there is cases where I do assert context. Why do I not see my assert context? This is a beautiful situation for it. There we go. Income test. Boom. There we are. Okay. So I've got this little thing that I've created. So we're just going to, again, it's not stealing if you steal from yourself. We're going to just do this. And then I want my little with DB scope method. And we're just going to grab this little guy. And probably going to need to come back and get more, but we're going to come back and do this. So let's go here. This is something that I think is an underrated thing. That was horrible wording. That's an indication I'm lacking caffeine. Okay. Something that is horribly underrated. Stench. What? Spell checker, fix it for me. I'm too stupid to see it. Spelling, rename. Thank you. Is the idea of making sure that your unit tests are easy to write. Oftentimes people hate this. They feel like they're spending time standing up infrastructure for their test projects. That they're like, but I want to be focusing on writing my app code. That's good, but if your app's quality will tend towards the quality of your tests. So if you care at all about quality, spend the time doing it. Okay, so we're gonna do this DB scope resolver. Now I need to go back and grab that. Where are you? I assume you're down below. Yeah. So this is a fancy thing inside of AutoMocker. AutoMocker generally will create things up for you, but sometimes you want it to be more intelligent about what it is doing, and just having it always return back the mocks or similar things that it's created is not what you want. So in this case, we're just going to get rid of this because we don't have a messenger right now. This isn't a thing, so we're just going to do none of that. And then this is going to go away, this is going to go away, it's going to go away, it's going to go away. We're just going to convert this stuff all the way down. I should probably make this thing a lot more generic so that when I poach it, it's not that bad. And we're just going to steal this, turn that off, and away we go. Okay, so there's that, there's that, there's that. It's unhappy that we don't have this, and we're going to do this. Okay, so This guy here is intentionally spinning up a SQLite database. He's intentionally going through and putting it inside of our temp directory into a Rentopoly test folder. It's then hiding everything underneath a GUID name for reasons just to keep things from colliding. We don't need the messenger. That's not a real thing. And the important part is he is an AutoMocker resolver. So anytime something asks for a SQL or for a DB context, it is going to go through and do this resolution, where it will then create up a new DB context for us, pointed at a well-defined file path with pooling intentionally turned off. The idea here is we don't want to have transient data messing up our tests. So with DB context, when you add a record, it will hold on to that in memory. If your app shuts down and you haven't actually persisted that to the file, that data is gone. So by doing it this way, it allows us to basically open a new DB context to the file and say, is the data in the file, right? I don't want to accidentally have reference sharing or things like that going around. Now, the one thing we are lacking here is this board game context options. So if we go and look here, let's back up. Just going to steal some more code. Steal some more code, and we're going to go in here, context. And we're going to create a overload that takes in a DB context options. We can just do this. And I think we might be a little more specific. So we're going to do still base constructor, but we're also going to do a let's see, DB context options, but I want to be specific. I don't want any old options just flying in. I kind of want them to be for me. And then we will call the base constructor on that. And now everyone should be happy. Okay, so that works, that works, that works. DB context factory, create DB context. Did I accidentally whack something? Did I miss something? I feel like I missed something. Interesting. Wait, you're now happy. Oh, because I did this. Create DB context. I think what we're going to do, actually, is we're going to do this. And we're just going to clean this up a little. We'll go like this. We'll let this be the real method. Create doesn't need to exist. And then this can be create DB context. I'm guessing it got renamed, and that's how my old one is working. So we aren't going to stress about it. The other thing you'll note is it is intentionally calling migrate. So people will argue that this is no longer a unit test because I am now very much going against the file system. I don't care. What is important to me is that I have confidence when this test runs that my code is working properly. Okay, so we got this. Not convertible to disposable. Or are you no longer disposable? Interesting. Okay. I kind of want to give myself... I'm a little unhappy that this thing no longer has disposable on it. Okay, that's kind of annoying to me, but whatever. So we want to return something else here that actually comes back with disposable, because this guy clearly is. Let's make ourselves a public interface DB scope. Yeah, T context, where this derives from IDB context factory of T context and is also I disposable. That way all the things work. Now this guy here gets returned here, which goes here. That works there. This guy now goes here. This goes here. This goes here. That goes there. Bippity boppity booyah. Let's see. Generic. So we need a generic constraint on that. Yeah? No? What is your problem? It wants the same It wants that. You get it. Why aren't you prompting? There. Okay. Now we should be good. There we go. Okay, so now we've got a DB scope. So down here, what we want to do is using var assert context, right? So this is going to be the reading on the end. Factory, create DB context, right? We would then want to do the assert context, rentals, single async. Sure, we'll do this, right? So we're going to go var rental gets await. And then we're going to need to verify that we have actually gotten the right thing. Oh, this is... Oh, yeah, good. One thing I will comment, going back to your question earlier, Jared, about the namespaces. Oftentimes, you'll note I will favor making the namespaces plural versus singular because you can run into naming collisions otherwise. So, for what it's worth. Okay, so there's that, there's that, there's that. And then we're going to go assert equals... let's see. We expect a loan2 to be test loaner. Sure. What else did we set on this guy that we're expecting to set? Loaned on should be equal to date time today. Yes, there is a bug here, right? If the execution occurs and then we roll over past midnight, this will fail. I'm not even going to stress about that. I am not even going to stress about that. The proper way to do it might be to subtract and assert and blah, 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 whatever. Let's see. We expect returned on to be null because we're making a new one. Let's see. And then, no, we don't want... Okay. Copilot, you're not being helpful anymore. Let's see. So... We'll probably want to check the board games at some point, but we're going to start here. That's probably good enough. Okay, so now we need code to actually make this work. So step 1, run test. Test should always start in a failing state. And if you write your test after the code, you should like stash your changes after you write the test and make sure that that without your fix, the test actually, in fact, fails. Because if your test doesn't fail, it doesn't matter, right? It's not actually tested. Good. Okay, so this failed. Let's make sure it failed for a reason we expect. Sequence contains no elements. Not surprisingly, there's nothing in the database. Okay, so let's add some stuff to the database. So this guy here is going to need access to our DB context. Great. We can do that. So let's do here. And he's going to need a database context. So board game context. DB context, and we're going to go ahead and just cache that into a little property, and just for posterity we're going to slap in a null check, and then we'll make it private. Nobody should be needing this thing outside of us, so this is an implementation detail. Okay, so down in here then what we actually need to do is db context dot rentals dot add, right? We are looking to add in a new thingy, so we have to create a new rental. Rental, new rental gets new, and then we're going to need to populate some stuff on it. We'll do that in a moment. We'll do new rental, and then we're going to do db context, save changes async. And we should await that guy. Boom. So that should persist it. So that should at least get an item in there, right? That'll put the item in the database. But we did say we wanted to do loaned on equal to date time today. Great. That gets that part out of the problem. And then we need a loaned to, right? Which is going to need to be some name. So we need to have some way of setting that. So the way we typically do that is with an observable property, because we're just going to assume this is going to get bound here in a minute. So observable property, private string, let's do loan2. That sounds reasonable. Loan2. Now immediately we're getting a warning here saying, hey, the loan2 property could be null. Now practically, once we data bind this in the UI, it's not going to be null. A text box can't send a null in. However, it is still probably good practice to make sure that we don't submit this unless loan2 has been set. Oh, look at that. That'll work. Thank you, Copilot. Okay, Copilot, write the can execute method for me too. Oh, you failed. Okay. So what we also want to do here as well is make sure that we don't allow the user to click the save button. If we're going to require the loan2 property to be non-null, we should probably check it. All right, so we're going to do can execute gets name of, and then we feed it another method. So can submit. And this way of naming our relay command methods, this is a Kevinism. So it's not you know, anything fancy. Can submit. There we go. Bippity boppity booyah. The AI is too good. Okay, so now what we want to do is our test is still going to be failing, but we should be able to set on our view model loan2, and actually this is probably, it's probably reasonable to say test loan. Wow, that's just so good. Okay, run test. Test is now green. Huzzah. This should give us a lot of confidence that now what we're going to go build is actually going to bloody work, right? We should probably write out some more tests around the can execute on the command, those types of things. We might circle back to that in a little bit. For now, we're gonna complete the circle and get the full UI in place. Right, so we have this this main window here, and right now all we did was we left the rentals as a to-do. Now I am grouping these guys by feature, so on this side here I'm going to come over and do a user control. Right, so I'm going to do add rentals, add rental view maybe. So add rental view model, add rental view, those things go together. Huzzah. That's what we're kind of expecting. Now, the part here, so, oh, hang on. File scope the namespace, let the partial handle the base class, remove all the usings. Okay, now we can work. Now we can work. So this add rental view, we're going to go up here, and rather than this text block here, what we are going to do is add rental view. And then I am going to add the namespace. Come on. Come on. I believe in you. Okay. So X name, and I'm going to go add rental view. Right? So this guy's here. Now, this is one of those areas. WPF was built without really having things like dependency injection in mind. So there's going to be a couple times where we got to smooth over some rough edges because it's not really a thing. What are you unhappy about? Doesn't exist. Well, fine. Compile and find it. Figure it out. There you go. Okay. So inside of our main window here, what we ultimately want to get is that add rental view model. So let's do an add rental view model. Add rental view model. Right. And inside of here, I'm going to go with add rental view data context gets add rental view model. So I'm just going to link these things up right here in my code bucket, right? That's the purpose of this setup, is so that we can go through and do that. I am probably going to have to do it. Yeah, I'm probably going to have to do it after initialize component, because add rental view won't exist until after initialize component is called. So we're going to just move it down. And we may end up just not wanting to even do this data context set, because I think we're going to end up doing the other view model in here instead and just forwarding them in. So fine, it'll work. Okay, so we're going to come over here, and I'm going to just grab this D data context. So inside of the add rental view, the D namespace inside of XAML stands for design. And you'll note it is defined up here with something called expression blend. Expression blend is kind of something that has died off, or not completely died. It's lost a lot of popularity since its first inception. However, a lot of first-party tooling support is still built around it, and the idea with the D namespace is that these will help drive the Visual Studio design layer. So by setting the D : data context, we're telling the designer, hey, when I'm doing bindings and working in this XAML view, here's the class that's going to be backing this at runtime. Please give me IntelliSense for this class. It has no way of validating whether you're right or lying to it. but it does give you nice IntelliSense. The other thing is you can actually set any property on any control with a D value, and you will see it actually flow through. So for example, over here where we were setting up the text blocks text, if I were to do D colon and then flip over to the design mode, right, you'll note it still says to do here. And if let me get this in a compiling state here. Let's see, add a rental view model. Boom. And then if we launch, so that text box that I just set the D text on was on the very first one. Oh, we didn't register our view model. Stand by real quick. DI registrations are important. Let's see. In this case, I think we expect this guy to only be a singleton. So yeah, we only want a single instance of him. Probably won't matter because we're only going to ever resolve him from the DI container once, so whatever we register him as won't make a big difference. But you'll note this game catalog is no longer showing the text of to do. That's just gone because it only exists at design time. So if you are a big fan of the design preview stuff, learn to love D colon. It'll be your best friend because you can set up all kinds of stuff and get it going. Okay, so we've got our user control. We kind of need to lay out this thing here. So we've got a grid. Grid's fine. Let's see. So inside of the grid, let's do maybe a stack panel. Let's do a big margin around it though. No, actually, rather than a stack panel, let's do a card. Yeah, let's do a card. Go get the namespace for me. Thank you. And inside of the card, man, I wish it wouldn't auto close everything for me. Not ready. Just because I hit save doesn't mean I'm ready. Let's do a stack panel inside the card, and on the card we're going to put a margin of like 20. Right, so it's going to inset a little bit, and it's going to have a nice little thing on it. We might even have it shrink up to the contents or something. But inside of here, at minimum, what we need to set up is a text box. And we need the text property of it to be bound to our loaned to. You'll note now I'm getting IntelliSense on the property because I set my D data context above, which makes me a little bit happier. But let's go over to here. Let's grab our fields and let's grab a reasonable style for this text box. I'm kind of thinking I might go the filled style. I use outline a lot, but I think we're going to go, yeah, let's go a little more minimalist on this one. So we're going to grab that style. Come over here and go, thank you very much. Boom. And then I think the stack panel also wants to be inset by like a little bit all the way around. And then I kind of want to grab the hint stuff that it's got. So we're going to do this. We're going to grab a little bit of hint. I've got too many quotes or not enough quotes. Not enough quotes. And we're going to put something like loaned to. Something like that. That's bound. Then below this, we're going to want a button. The content of the button is going to be something like add. Save. Can't decide. Let's see. Let's see. Ikarish. Wow. Ikarish. I'm sorry. I'm probably butchering that name. Thank you very much. Let's see. Jared, do you know of any tools like the design panel for CSR HTML templates? Like if I was using Angular or Vue? Not really. However, the whole idea of the designer is kind of starting to fall out of favor. In a lot of cases, I oftentimes will not leverage the designer much in WPF because the designer by definition is showing you what your app might look like at runtime. I would much rather, and we can actually go and do this real quick. I would much rather use the live editor instead, right? I would rather be looking at this and going, okay, what will my app look like at runtime rather than what might my app look like at runtime. So that's the little difference where it's like, yeah, I think I I think I want to do this kind of thing. And a lot of web frameworks leverage that same idea. They would rather have you have your browser open and just hot reload stuff as you're editing your files, and show you your running application, rather than trying to do a design type surface. So I think in a lot of cases, you won't find those kind of design type surfaces out there in the web frameworks. So the other question, what is Rentopoly? At the moment, it is a simple little app that I am building to manage, or to help me remember when I've loaned out my board games to friends, because I do it way too much and I keep forgetting about it. But more importantly, it's also going to hopefully be a simpler application for building out WPF, Entity Framework Core, simple style application, but yet have enough complexity to be interesting. Oh, Jared, I'm asking more about the drag and drop functionality of components. I like that, especially for getting started. No, I don't know that. And that is a thing that's both a great and a horrible feature of WPF. The design surface lets you do that, but you'll note when I'm editing it, I'm rarely using the WYSIWYG editor to drag things around. And the reason is because, here, I'll just show it to you. Here is one of my big problems. For example, if I want to take this button and move it to the bottom, right? If I drag this button and start moving it around, oh, it's not going to, it's in a stack panel. How about we just do this, right? We'll resize it. You'll note the designer in WPF immediately defaults to absolute positioning everything, which is horrible. Like there's a couple things where you can like click things to have it like snap, and that's better. I get frustrated with it way too quick and just immediately throw it away, because it is that level of bad. The other thing I'm going to mention is this thing. I put an underscore in front of the save button. This is something that it's one of those minor things, but if you're building out anything on Windows, when I press the Alt key, you'll note how the S gets an underscore under it. This is very similar to how, like in most things like Visual Studio, when I press Alt, if you notice along my menus, the underscores pop up as well, and you can navigate by pressing the letter that corresponds to the underscore, right? So in ye olden days, I used to joke because the sort and cleanup usings was actually buried underneath the edit menu, and the keyboard shortcut used to be Alt E I O A. It was that many menus nested, and people kept laughing at me because I'm like, yeah, just clean and sort up using. It's Alt E I O A. What's so hard about that keystroke? Yeah, thankfully it's a lot better. And most of the time, people quickly rebound it because, dear heavens, that was too useful of a thing to be buried 4 menu levels deep. Or you turn on the cleanup and sort usings on save. However you want to go to do it. But if you're gonna build out things, especially in WPF, accessor keys, they're just like that nice little bit of extraness that makes me happy. Okay, buttons need commands because that's how you tell buttons what to do. So binding space, and then we should have a submit command because that's what we generated. And you'll note here the button immediately disabled, right? This is because commands are slightly better than just straight click handlers, because in addition to to just having a method that fires when the button's clicked, we also have this idea of, can the command be fired, right? And the way WPF interprets that command when bound to a button is if the can command for the command returns false, that means disable the button, right? So then we can type in here, and you'll note as we type in here, our can submit doesn't actually end up doing anything. This is kind of problematic, right? In my template, I went through and I left a small example of it. The reason for this is you actually have to specifically say, hey, when this property changes, go notify that this other command that, hey, you might want to reevaluate yourself. I'm different, right? So what we can do is we can come over here and we can go here, and I really am going to be shocked if this thing picks it up. But you have to spell submit right, otherwise it doesn't work. Wow, if this picks up and works with the edit and continue, yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think it's gonna work. That's requiring it to follow an edit and source generator and yeah, no. Okay, so buttons disabled, clicky, 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 and it didn't reevaluate. Oh, that's okay. So that's another problem. Okay, so we'll go and change it. So the other thing that's important here is when the binding actually takes the value from the UI and sends it into the view model. By default, the what is it? Update something, update source trigger. Yeah. So there are multiple options for your update source trigger. You'll note there's default, explicit, lost focus, and property changed. You almost never use explicit because that means you're having to write code and it will only do it when you explicitly call the method on the binding that says do it. People don't do that much. Okay, that one goes away. Default is kind of okay, but most of the time default is going to equate to lost focus. So because this thing isn't updating as you type, it's only updating when focus leaves the text box. It's not giving a great experience. We're going to do property changed. All right, so now if I go back, disabled, forward, back. Oh, it's so wonderful. Mwah. Lovely. So update source trigger. Be aware that for performance reasons, it defaults to on lost focus. If you have a text box where the user is going to be typing a bunch, you probably don't want it firing every single time the property changes. That's basically every keystroke. Right? That's probably too much. So choose based upon your application. I also don't like how light this is. We might change the foreground color of that in a moment. Okay, button. I don't like how you're set up horizontal alignment right. Let's get that a little cleaner. Nah, I don't like you on the right. I kind of want you down at the bottom. And maybe even, yeah, because at some point we got to do a list of games or something. So this stack panel is going to be a problematic thing. So let's do a grid. Grid row definitions. Let's see, row definition, height of auto, because the first row is just going to contain our little box. That's fine. Row definition, fill up all the remaining space. Row definition, height, auto. Right, so we're going to do that. Boom. Bippity boppity booyah. And then we're going to move the button down. Grid row 2. Boom. Do I want it on the right? Yeah, that seems fine. That'll be fine. Okay, and then we naturally get an object disposed exception because of reasons. Okay, we're gonna fire this up and then do it again because I'm pretty sure I know what we've done wrong. Our DB context is being thrown away, and that's not a good thing. So I'm going to loan a game out to myself because that seems like a rational thing to do. I hit save and I immediately cause a problem. So object dispose exception, call stack. Let's go back to ours here. So we got a DB context. The DB context came in and it blew up. So the reason our DB context is disposed is because I was an idiot. So I had mentioned that we were going to pull this guy out here. We were going to grab the board game context, and then we were going to call migrate on it. Obviously, this is wrapped in a using statement, so this context is now disposed of. The problem being is we also ask for an add rental view model, which gets resolved at the point we do get required service main window. Because main window requires an add rental view model, and in order to create an add rental view model, it needs to create another context. But it gave us the same DB context in both cases. That's not good. Why did it do this? Because ideally we would want a separate instance. Now when we register this DB context, you'll note that this thing has a context lifetime specified. And the default context lifetime is defaults to scoped. Now when you use the generic host inside of WPF, you basically don't have scopes. In ASP.NET Core, the framework is going to create DI scopes for you on each request because that is what the framework has deemed is the appropriate segmentation level. but you can make scopes yourself. You don't have to, like, it's in WPF because it predates this kind of stuff. It doesn't have any idea that it needs to do any of that stuff, so it doesn't, which means we have to do it ourselves if we want it. One simple option is we could say, you know what? We're going to change the lifetime of this thing from scoped down into transient, which transient just means give us a new one every single time, right? Grab that sucker. No need for sharing. Is that what we want? Maybe. Could be. We could also decide, you know what? Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go host services, get required service, and then service scope factory. Boom. We could get a service scope factory out and go create scope. How about using var scope gets, we should probably have this scope only exist, and then rather than resolving the board game context from effectively the root of the DI container, we then resolve it inside of this scope. And now what is it? Scope service provider, boom, get required service. So now, because we've created a scope, we are now inside and pulling out a separate context each time. Jared, have a good night. Hope the family's doing well. Looking forward to seeing you again. So we could either create a scope or we could go through and register this guy up as transient. What you should do depends on your app. I think in this case, I'm just going to go the scoped approach and make sure it works. Go here, we go here, myself, save. It saved. Now, without a way to view the list, kind of meaningless. So let's give ourselves a way to view the list. Let's keep going. So how about we do a new view model? Add class view rentals view model, right? So we're going to once again file scope the namespace, public's the class, observable object, boom. Okay, and then we're going to go, we need a board game context. All right, and we're going to slap that in, private the things, move you up. I'm going to null check you because of paranoia. And then here we now have a thing. So on this guy, what we're really looking to do is pull out the set of rentals that may exist, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to extract this. Now, I will make a quick comment. It is very possible to go through and bind directly to your DB context and your DB set. This is a thing you can do. I don't like it, okay? Because we could do something like context rentals, what is it? Local to observable collect. Like, you can do this kind of thing, right? And pull it out. And it's a quick and dirty way of doing it. This always gives me a little bit of a twitch factor. This is also a reason why you might want to consider the appropriate scoping of your DB context. Because if you share the same context in multiple places, now this local collection, as it's being added to, will automatically update. So let's show this off. Let's show this off, right? So public observable collection rentals. No, we ain't doing that garbage. We ain't doing that garbage. We're doing this, right? So that's gonna go like that, right? View model done, right? So let's add a UI for it. User control. So view rentals view. Feels a little awkward to name it that way, but you know what? Whatever. D data context. D design instance type gets view rentals view model. This is actually going to be local. And then I usually set is design time creatable to false, because it's really rare that my view models aren't going to like take in dependencies. Because in order for it to be design time creatable, it more or less has to have a default constructor. Okay, so that goes like that. That goes like that. And inside of this grid, we're just going to go quick and dirty. And we're just going to do a list box, probably. No, we'll do a data grid. Yeah, because data grid will have auto generate column set to true. We're going to go stupid easy mode. What do I call it? Rentals. And then we're going to set is read only to true, because we don't want you editing here. Done. Come over here. We're going to grab this guy. Give me my XAML back. Basically want to do this ish. And then we want to do clock. How about just clock? Yeah, so don't like passing DB context and view models. Usually have a data access class. That is very reasonable. And oftentimes that is a good way of doing it. Yeah, so it very much makes sense, especially if you have, or if you like going with like the repository style pattern. Doing something like that makes a lot of sense. It works really well. I don't necessarily dislike it. In the interest of speed, I'm going to pass it in directly, but yes, that is very much a valid approach. And especially as things grow in complexity, what you will find is that if those types of data access layers can help consolidate a lot of business logic, especially around if we say, hey, you know what, when we, create a new rental, we want, the following things to happen, right? We want to trigger this and that and whatnot. Having all of that consolidated in some sort of extra layer makes great sense. So we're going to do that. We're going to do that. We're going to DI inject this sucker. And once again, this is view rentals view model. Done. Done. And then we will see that goes there. That goes there. Feel like I missed a step. Oh, main window view model code behind this. So view rentals view model. View rentals view model. We're going to come down here. View rentals view data context. View rentals view model. Boom, 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 go. Okay, so now in theory, we created one last time, so we should be able to see it. Oh. And if you forget to change the text, about view rentals. Boom, there. And then in here, it doesn't do anything because our view model didn't actually load our collection, right? So let's see. Context, rentals, load. Yeah, and this is one thing I'm going to hate. We're going to do a synchronous call inside of a constructor against the database. So we're going to burn this in a moment. To do not do this. So just to be clear, no, not in production. Do not do this. Copilot. There we go. So proof is in the pudding. We now have database. We now have data grid. We now can view the data. We can now bind it. In the same vein of wanting to have like that data access layer and some semblance of separation, we can bind directly to our data level objects, right? I've passed up my rental class, which is down in my data namespace, and I've directly bound it into my view. That is a thing you can do, and it is sometimes okay to get away with it. Entity Framework also has support for doing things like I notify property changed on these properties if you want to bind this way. This is the quick and dirty way of doing EF, and it makes for some cool demos and is really impractical for a lot of applications. And I say really impractical because it has a lot of tight coupling where in order for this to work, you're basically taking that nice MVVM pattern that we've had, and you're just kind of like squishing the sides together and bringing it all in. It works if what you're building is about this big. It doesn't work when you want to build something this big. Because oftentimes what you'll find is you want to start adding stuff to it, right? Like you can imagine, hey, I want to put in, a combo box in my, fire this back up again. Right? I want to put in a combo box column here, and the easiest way to bind the combo box is to have a list of objects. Well, I need that list of objects in an easy to bind location. Well, I can do some relative source binding all the way up to the data grid's data context to try to grab that. Or if I could just put it on the object in the row, that'd be a lot easier. So in many cases, what I end up doing is I end up usually creating purpose-built view models that wrap my data objects. The other advantage that has is oftentimes you will start mutating your data objects, and the view models wrapping them may start out and have a very similar API surface. But what I have found is that over time, usually they start to drift, right? The view models tend to be really specific around where they are in the app and what they need to do their job, whereas the data objects their purpose is around storage. Right? So they start to mutate around, well, I need to store this additional value. I want to have this extra stuff, right? And so they start to change a little bit, and your view models that are acting on your database entities almost are more like views into the data rather than the data itself. And that's more akin to what you actually want when you're building those things up, right? The view model, it should be there to support the view. And so if you've made your view model, in this case the row in the data grid, your data object, you've now moved away from something whose purpose is to support the view into something that's also there to support data access. And now you've kind of started to muddy the waters between its single purpose, and when those two things come into conflict, you have problems. So if you want the quick and dirty, this is a way to do it. Okay, I don't like this way, so we're gonna throw this way. Right, something closer to what I would probably end up doing, right? So public class rental item view model, something like that, right? And we'll do observable object. Right, so we'll build this guy out, and these guys will probably actually take in a rental object. And at present, I think their API is gonna be kind of similar, right? I'm gonna kind of want these things at least at first, right? So we're gonna do something like this, and I don't think I'm going to actually make them read-write. I think they're just gonna be read-only properties. This isn't something I anticipate anybody actually assigning. Hey, Copilot, write the code for me. Okay, there's your hint, Copilot. There you go. There you go. Good, Copilot. I appreciate that. Okay, we might not even need it to be... Yeah, let's not make it an observable object yet. We have nothing that needs property change stuff, right? So then our observable collection becomes a set of these things, right? And we're going to do this. Now, there's one more thing that we actually want to do here is... For observable collections inside a WPF, we're just going to get rid of this before I do something stupid like leave it there. We need to actually create up a new instance of these things. But if you try to go through and modify an observable collection from multiple threads, you will run into problems. Now, we have async and await in C#. Async and await is wonderful. We love our multi-threading. And it is very likely that we may want to modify this collection from different threads. Built into it is a hard-to-find class called binding operations. And then it has a wonderful method called enable collection synchronization. Right? And so here you tell it the collection, in this case rentals, and then you give it an object to lock on. So you could imagine that if you were to do this manually, to do synchronization, oftentimes in C#, the lock keyword is quite common. We lock on an instance of a thing, and everything inside the body of that lock, only one thread gets in at a time. That way, we can guarantee synchronization. Effectively, when you turn on collection synchronization, that's what you're doing. This is going to wrap up and say, okay, when we go to work with this collection, whoever's going to work with it has to lock on this object. It's going to hold the lock on that object, do the collection mutation, then release it, and then go. This will make your collection slower. It'll also make it work in a nice multi-threaded environment and raising collection change. So we accept the minor performance hit to be able to do this. And we don't actually care what instance of an object. We just need to give it an object. Doesn't matter, right? It just needs an instance of something to play with. So we'll do new object and call it a day. I guess if we're going to just initiate it this way, we can actually do this. Boom. It is worth noting that when it's enabling collection synchronization, it needs to be doing this from the UI thread. If it doesn't end up, if you don't end up doing this from the UI thread, you're going to end up with some very, very bizarre behavior. So I know some people who have written fun extension methods around doing this kind of setup, but they then wrap it up in something like, I don't know, application.current.dispatcher or something, just to ensure that it's always invoked from the UI thread. We're going to play fast and loose and just not do that. So because we know that this thing is going, at least at present, this thing is registered in DI. It's going to be resolved when we first spin up our main window. Not a big deal. It's going to be on the UI thread. So that'll work. That'll be happy. Now, next thing we need is something to go through and load up our objects. So how about async task load about outstanding rentals. And then just going back, Icarus's comment earlier, this is the type of thing that you could very easily put into a repository or service or a data access layer as well. So if you are setting up a system with extra layers in it, this would be something that would make a lot of sense to go in there. So in this case, what we are going to do is we're going to do rentals clear. So we're going to just blow out what is in there, and we are then going to go context rentals where xx let's see, returned on is null, and then let's do to let's see, yeah, to list async is probably fine. So there is a question here about, is this about to return, like when you do to list async on any database collection, you have to be concerned with how much data you're about to pull back, right? If this were ever to be a very large table or a large amount of data, this could be problematic. We're not going to that. So, but something worth keeping in mind. And then I need an await because that's what we do. And then we're gonna go rentals, add new rental. So, and this is probably not clear. Rental item view model. You could use await for each. That's a good point. And that goes here. That goes here. And then because I need to get this from a queryable to an, was it to async enumerable? And then auto, what is the, hang on, I've got it because I believe I did it over here too. It's the wonderful part about having other things is I need the asyncy thingy. Why am I blanking on this? Any framework says Just that's not how you spell for each. That's how you misspell it. Enumerate records. Oh, as async enumerable. That's what I'm messing up on. That's not two. Boom. There. Something more like that. And boom. That way, rather than pulling back the whole set, it can grab a cursor, iterate, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we have this lovely method that will load it up, but now the question is, at what point do we end up calling this, right? We could give ourselves a command that we fire off, right? So we could do something like a relay command, public async task on refresh, because it's sometimes nice to have a refresh, and then this guy literally just calls await, right? Boom, done. Like, that is an option. What is your problem here? Oh. Boom, partial. Because this has the source generator out the command for me. But we probably want to have this, have some sort of loaded list going into it. And so then the question becomes, okay, when might we want to trigger this? So this is one of the areas that people always get a little twitchy on, is they get this idea that in WPF and MVVM that you aren't supposed to touch the code behind. That is a bold-faced lie. Code behind is just fine to play with. The question is what you put in your code behind, right? You can use your code behind, but the stuff in the code behind should very much be related to view interaction, right? The code behind is part of your view. Leverage it for your view, right? If you're putting business logic in there, stop it. Now you've got a problem, right? But in our case, it's like, well, I want to wire up for an event, right? So in this case, we might do, we could do loaded, we could do visibility change. Let's just do loaded, right? Boom, user control loaded, done. Done. Async void. Let's see, if data context is view rentals view model. And sometimes we'll wrap this up in a property type situation. View model, load outstanding rentals, await, done. Okay. The important thing to note here, async void. This is the one and only place where async void is designed to work, right? Is top level event handlers. This is an event handler. It is at the top level. This is going to go through and invoke it. The important thing to think about is what happens if an exception is thrown, right? Because the exception will walk up, and when it gets to the async void, it goes, I don't know where to go. And then it promptly goes to your unhandled exception thing, and your app crashes. It's wonderful. That's probably not what you want, right? So when writing async void, be very, 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 very cautious of how exceptions are being handled, right? It's tempting to just try catch all the things. That may not be what you want. In this case, we'll just let the app crash. I'm kind of okay with that. Let's fire this up. And now we should see something that looks similar yet distinctly different. All right, so here, boom. And you'll note, because we've changed the type of object, our data grid is now different, right? We're auto-generating the columns, so it looks kind of weird, but you know what? We can go through and clean this up, right? So rather than auto-generating columns, we're going to intentionally turn that off. So you kind of want you to just sit out of my way for a minute. Having you topmost is kind of being annoying. Auto-generate columns false. Great. So we got no columns now. Data grid. So now let's do data grid columns. Copilot, you want to write them for me? Oh, disappointing. I was really hoping you were going to write them for me. Let's see. So how about text column, header, loaned to, binding, loan to. Boom. See that? Now we've got that. And then we go, how about on? This can be loaned on. And in this point, and at this point, we could do the extra column for the returned on, but do we really need to? Our where column says only grab the null one, so 2 is going to be good enough. At some point, we're probably going to, here, just as a thing, games, right? We're gonna wanna list that at some point, right? To show that up, and we might want to clean up this binding to be a little different, just so that it's we don't care about this too much. Let's see. What is it? We might have to break apart and do some styling on it, because I think on the loaned on, we probably, like, we want the sortability to be on the date, but we want the display to be a string that we format. You don't use Windows Power Toys. I have in the past. I have not reinstalled it recently, but there's a couple things that one of my colleagues was showing me recently. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was the desktop management stuff in it that was pretty slick. But Power Toys is very worthwhile looking into. There was also one where there was a colleague trying to do something with global hotkeys. I don't remember what he was trying to do, but he ended up solving it with Power Toys as well. So, wonderful. Okay. We're in, we're working, we're happy. We've got new rentals. We've got viewing of rentals. We should probably put a refresh button on here somewhere. Let's put that in real quick. Actually, you know what we're going to do? We're going to kind of cheat a little bit. We're going to cheat. So let's do a button. And then the content of the button is going to be a pack icon, material, design, pack icon, kind gets refresh. This is not going to hot reload, so we're just going to kill it. What do you use for always on top if not Power Toys? In this case, I literally went to my window.xaml and set topmost true. What are my solution items? Good question. Let me grab a quick link. Never had it in my solutions. No, so I started this application using my WPF template. So if you install these .NET templates, right, and then we look at the WPF one, you can then go .NET new Kaboo WPF, and you get a entire solution with WPF spun up. And there's a ton in here. Specifically, the ones that I have in here, the targets is empty. This one you can pretty much ignore. The directory packages.props is using the centralized package management feature that's fairly new. That way you can manage all of your packages and versions in one place. You don't have to have them per project anymore. You can just manage it all right here. You can still use the NuGet Package Explorer GUI, and if it sees this file, it's hip to understand what to do with that one file, and you don't have to worry about it. So it's just a convenience thing there. The directory build props, this is something that automatically applies to every project in the solution for me. So I do things like turn on implicit usings, nullable reference types, set my lang version, and build this guy out here as well. So I leave some, inside of my template, I leave a lot of commented stuff so that if you want to turn it on, you can. If not, it's off. It sets up things like user secrets for you. The other thing inside of like the CS project on the WPF project, I also have the setup for if you want to build and distribute a single exe. This is the magical incantation to get a single exe in WPF working. Is you just take this and you go boom, and now you have .NET Publish will give you just a standalone exe. I shouldn't say build. .NET Build will still give you all the files, but if you run .NET Publish against this target, it will go ahead and give you just the standalone exe that now you have one file you can copy and paste around, xcopy, deploy, and all that stuff. It is worth noting that when you do this, it will break a lot of debugging tools. So I have a configuration of, hey, don't do this in debug mode. So you do have to do .NET publish with the configuration of release, and you're off to the races. But that's at least what's there. The editor config is just a pre-canned one. I think it's almost identical to the default one you get when you do .NET new editor config. And then the NuGet config is just, it's a standardized NuGet config, but it's set up with the new package source feature that's designed to help guard against supply chain attacks. So if you aren't using the NuGet config, you should probably consider it. And if you do have an existing NuGet config, you may double check and make sure that you have the project source mapping set up. Especially if you pull from more than one source. This just ensures that, in my case, all of my packages are always going to come from NuGet.org. Right? If somebody did something bad, infected my machine, and got a hold of my NuGet config in my user profile, it's not going to affect this project. So it just, minor layer of security. Blah, 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 blah. What test packages are going to be included in all projects? So my template sets it up with XUnit. If I remember correctly, I might need to double check, but I believe my template has a switch if you don't want. Yeah, you can do -- tests, and my template won't generate you any of the unit test side of things. So if you just say, hey, I want the WPF stuff only, don't give me this testing crap, great, -- no test, and you won't get it. It sets it up with XUnit. I've contemplated throwing around different things, like, should I add fluent assertions to it? Should I do one with like the MS test and unit? It's like, So, but if people have suggestions and stuff, feel free to throw them up here. I've got ideas of stuff that I want to build out. The source generator analyzer one are interesting because I've been informed that some of the documentation around source generators and analyzers is really, really bad, and I am trying to con some Microsoft folks into coming on stream and helping build one out. Would XUnit be included for the main project? Great question. Great question. So even though you define your whole set of packages in your packages props, each CS proj still lists which items from the packages props that they actually care about. So in this case, no. If we look at our dependencies, you'll note that in my packages, I'm only getting the stuff that I've requested. But down in my test project, if we look at my dependencies, and I go to packages, you'll note this is then where XUnit is showing up, because when I look at the CS proj here, you'll see that I'm actually now saying, okay, here are all of the packages that I want to bring in. And you can even get down a little more specific as well. There's various things in the centralized package management feature, like if you need one project to be pinned at, for whatever reason, you need coverlet at version 4 for one of your unit test projects, but not for the others, you can actually come in here and tweak this to say, hey, you know what I really want is this guy to be pinned at, the 4.0 type thing, but the rest of my projects, they can rev coverlet and be on latest and greatest or whatnot. So you can override it on a per project level as well. Yeah. So the versioning is all centralized. It really cuts down on the problem where occasionally you'll run into the situation where you've got, project A is using version 1 and project B is using version 2. It's like, yuck, right? This makes that almost impossible. I say almost because you can always override it per project, but it very much cuts down on the issue. So it's my preferred way, definitely, of managing my NuGet packages now that it's been officially released. So it's been something that they've kind of had working for a while, but only, I think it was in the Visual Studio release last November. Don't quote me on that. Something about then, where they finally got the Visual Studio tooling support for it. Because if you used it before that point, you were basically on your own to manage it yourself. Like, If you went and managed NuGet packages here, Visual Studio went, I don't know, you're doing something weird, I give up. But now Visual Studio plays nice with it. So, huzzah. Okay, we were doing something really quick down here on the view rentals. I wanted to do this, I wanted to do this, I wanted to do this. I wanted to grab in my material design themes because for whatever reason, it doesn't always like to... Boom, there we go. Okay, so I want to do this. I want to do vertical alignment top, and I want to do horizontal alignment right. So I'm very intentionally going to slap this button right over the top of my data grid and land it up there. And then let's grab the buttons. So question online, is Blazor any good? I think so. I've done, if you go poking around a little bit, there's some past streams that I've done fairly recently on Blazor, building it out. So I personally kind of like it, mostly because it lets me as a WPF guy build web stuff. Like I'm a desktop person who doesn't like JavaScript or TypeScript. And so it lets me feel like I can bring my skill set into the web without, you know, hating my life. Let's see, margin 2. And set that a little bit. Let's do 3. That looks pretty good. Oh, did I bind the command? Nope. Nope. Turns out you should bind your commands if you want the button to actually work. So, let's see. I'm looking at C# and thinking, damn, this language is popping up. Have you seen XAML for Blazor? Oh, you're scaring me, Mr. X. No, I have not seen that. I'd be very interested in it. There's already some really cool stuff happening. Okay, now I have to go brag on my coworkers again. Let's see. Teletech, MVVM, Blazor, YouTube. Go. Find it. That's not it. That's it. This one. We're close. Pause. So one of my colleagues, Kelly, Kelly, I love listening to you, but not that much. Where's the share button? Share button. Copy. Boom. I helped Kelly put together a little sample of using the MVVM community toolkit inside of Blazor. And he actually just pointed me to a repository earlier today where somebody kind of took what he started with and built out what looks to be a pretty awesome toolkit, wrapping it up nicely for Blazor. And then he even took his toolkit and then applied Blazor Hybrid to a WPF app as well. And I went, love it, love it. So at some point I need to dig through it. You use Bing. I do use Bing. I will say I have quickly become a fan of Bing Chat, the Chat GPT built into Microsoft. I'm also a big fan of Bing Rewards because it helps fund the board game addiction. You can all XAML for Blazor directly integrates Blazor with Silverlight syntax. Oh, that is interesting. Do you have a... Okay, I gotta look this up. XAML for Blazor. This really feels like, when you say XAML for Blazor, this very much feels like Silverlight reincarnated. Let's see here. A short version on Bing Rewards, you do searches, you get points, and in my case, I cash in my points for Amazon gift cards. And then once they're in Amazon gift card land, then they can be turned into all kinds of things. Oh, wow. XAML for Blazor. Well, now that's interesting. So you can then just start add XAML files. Instantiate your XAML controls. Wow. Wow. So who is money for searches already? Well, and that's my rationale with the Bing rewards is I'm going to search anyway. I might as well get something for it. And there used to be the big debate between Bing versus Google, and I think at this point it's really close in terms of who gives better searches. And at present, I usually like the Bing stuff tends to land right where I want. And because I usually like using the Bing chat anyway, it's kind of convenient. What I'm really looking for is I want to see their root level namespace for their XAML. Which XAML version are they pulling in? New item, XAML user control. Yeah, show me a XAML file though. Show me a XAML file. There's the razor. There's the reference to the XAML file. Show me the XAML file. State has changed. There we go. This is what I want. Oh, interesting. That's shocking to me. So they brought in XAML 2006. Not even like 2009? So you weren't joking. Yeah, same as WPF. This is literally copy paste my WPF code and drop it. Interesting. See, this mildly disappoints me because it means you don't get things like generics, which is a bummer. But it's also a huge bonus because it literally means I just copy and paste it up into a Blazor project and we're off to the races. This view models thing also makes me twitch, but whatever. All this code here, this is why you use the community toolkit. This becomes a observable object. You put an attribute on this field and you delete the rest of the code. Done. Wow. Wow. Okay, thank you. I'm saving this. This warrants further investigation. Let's see. Do you know of any solution for building a modular plugin for WPF? I don't think I know of. No. And it gets a little tricky. So yeah, so it depends on what you're looking to build. I assume you're looking to build a WPF app but expose a plugin architecture for other people to build on top of it. Oh, McMaster's got one. Okay. Without knowing anything about this library whatsoever and knowing entirely, so Nate McMaster, awesome developer, used to work for Microsoft. Yeah, brilliant guy. I could highly recommend any project he ever puts out, and just straight up easy. Because a plugin system is kind of difficult in a lot of cases, and I imagine he's probably tried to handle a lot of the complexity, specifically because you get into weird cases where you have to know about like assembly load contexts and in ye olden days app domains and that kind of thing, and isolation becomes a big deal as well. Yeah, MVC and Razor. Wow, nice. Yeah, I would probably tell you to look at this. WPF gets a little weird though, because whoever builds plugins for your app is going to need to be on the same .NET architect or same version of .NET and WPF that your main app is built on, right? It depends on what level you want to expose the plugin to, right? If the plugin doesn't get exposed to anything but like a handful of interfaces, the fact that you're a WPF app is irrelevant, right? Then it doesn't matter. But if you're specifically saying, hey, I want to expose something, maybe like how Fiddler works, right? So Fiddler, popular application for being able to, fiddle with your network traffic. I won't turn it on because it'll kill my stream, and that's bad. But you can you can build plugins for it, but it has the same problem where the plugin that you built, the reference assemblies that you have to use are very specific, and they need to match the version of Fiddler you're going against. Otherwise, you run into all kinds of problems. So it's not hard to build. The versioning is where things can sometimes become problematic, and it's usually not bad. It depends on how big of a community you get, how many people are building it, because it can quickly become oh shoot, they put out an update, I have to go rev all my plugin stuff again. So that I'm going to just assume that that's why on Nate's library he has this type of thing here, right? Of these are the shared types. That way, if your app version goes and these types don't change, again, this is an assumption. I haven't looked into this close enough to know. But if these types don't change, you're fine, right? The plugin system just keeps working along, right? See, shared type. So the shared types are effectively the API between your plugin sandbox and your actual host. And so as long as that API remains consistent, everything works. So yes, without diving more into this, I would just assume that this is probably awesome, because Nate builds cool stuff. I got to work with him at one point during a hackathon, and he was awesome to work with. So Nate, if you're watching this, it was a good time. We should find something to work on. Okay, where were we? Something, refresh button. That's really great. I really should have made it look more interesting. View rentals, view model. So we're going to do something like await task dot delay, just so we can see something happen, because frankly, it's going way too fast. Are we even getting in here? Oh. So it turns out if you want to have it work, you probably should compile the code before you try to run it. I get too used to the hot reload stuff just working. Thinking, bah, huzzah. Away we go, right? And if we want to get really fancy, we can go in here. We can do a progress bar. Actually, we can just come over and copy it. So, because this is something that's worth noting. And again, another reason to use the MVVM toolkit. Let's see. Fully indeterminate progress bar. Yeah, we're just going to go fully indeterminate. That sounds great. Come here. You. Come. Copy. You. Here. Paste. Boom. There. Done. And so that guy is going to sit in the middle. And he's going to be great. And we want to toggle his visibility, right? So we want to bind him to something. And ultimately, what we would like to bind him to is the loading behavior of this. Is the project you're doing now private? No. However, you'll note I haven't even created the repository, so don't let me end the stream without pushing. It will be public. But I want to get this guy going up here. So there's two cases that we've got here, right? Because we have put this thing in a public method that's being invoked, we can't leverage the fact that this relay command actually has a method for us to be able to use. So let's take all of this, let's put it in here, and then what we will do is we will come to our code behind, and rather than invoking the method, we're going to go with the refresh command, execute async, right? We're just going to fire that off, and then when you invoke the command, all commands take parameters, except for in this case, this command has no parameters, so we just pass null. And we're done. Now, what we can do over here is we can actually bind this guy to the refresh command dot is running. So, is running. There we go. But visibility, we're going to convert it. So I think this is probably something I should add to it. Do I not? I really should put this in. So Boolean to visibility converter, one of the only converters that's in the box with WPF. Should probably be in my default template to just have it here. It feels weird adding something to the template that isn't actively being used by the template. Boom. So we have that. So, wait, is that right? If it is running, make it visible. Yes, we want the progress bar visible while the command is running. Okay, fire it off. So we come here, we see a loading spinner, huzzah! We click, we get a loading spinner, huzzah! And you'll note the button is disabled while it is running. This is by design. The default behavior for the Community Toolkit commands is to not allow concurrent execution, right? But if you would like to allow concurrent execution, you can turn it on, right? So you can go allow concurrent executions and say true, but by default it's false. And in this case, I don't think it makes sense to have the load being triggered more than once, right? To do this just here to simulate a delay, right? Perfect. We've got that. We've got that. And at some point, we need to be able to mark this thing as done, right? So let's add the ability to mark something as returned. So this is the case where it makes a lot more sense. Actually, you know what? Hang on. Add to source control. Let's just add this guy in. Let's see. License template. I heard MIT was cool. Let's see. Nice touch would be if the refresh icon would spin during execution. Well, we can make it so. Private repository, no. A simple little WPF app to help manage my board game library. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, make it so. Okay, so if we go back here, we should now have Rentopoly. Boom. So if anybody wants to play along at home, there's that. So we could, so here, because you asked, Mr. X, we will make the icon spin while we are loading, because that's interesting. We can do this. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so no, stop helping me. Stop helping me. Button content. Let's see, which is the what? How do we want to trigger this? We probably want to trigger this on when the control goes disabled, I think. I think that probably makes the most sense. I'm just trying to think of when do we actually want to do it. And I think the easiest thing to do is a simple data trigger when let's see. So based on do that. No, stop helping. I know it's invalid, XAML. You're jumping ahead of the game. Okay. And then we're gonna go stop. Yeah, so we could do the data trigger as well. That works. Binding. The guy is gonna lose. Well, yeah. Ruining will not do it. Value true. Stop. Okay. And then this is where we want to do the begin storyboard. Don't even. All right. And button dot resources. And let's do storyboard x key spin storyboard. Whee, we go round and round and round. Okay, so we do that, and then we do Double animation using oh, I think we can just do double animation. Yeah, because we can do, because we'll go from 2 0 from, oh, I guess we want to go from 0 to 359, right? Because ultimately what we're going to want to do is just trigger the rotation all the way around. Thank you, Justin Bieber. Oh, come on, Copilot. You are really ruining the fun here. That's a horrible way to write it too, by the way. Element syntax all the way. Yuck. Yuck. No. Stop being stupid. Darn you, Copilot. I'm doing something different just because I bloody can. Okay, and then we want to come in here and go data trigger exit actions. All right, and then we want to do something like remove storyboard. That's getting late. I can't type. Static resource. What? Wait. What? Did it remove storyboard? No, stop storyboard. That's why I'm getting confused, right? Yeah. Stop storyboard. Begin storyboard name. Got it. Name start spin. Start spin. There. Okay. So something like that. Something like that. Making a mess. Making a mess. Okay. So now what we need to do is, in order to do the rotation, there are two ways to mutate objects in WPF. They are the layout transform, which when you do it at the layout time, that affects sizes and relative positions, right? So if you change something's like offset or spin something, that can affect the elements around it. Layout transforms are more expensive because they trigger layout passes. Right? There are render transforms which only affect the visible display of things, which means you can do fancy things like spinning, but they aren't going to change layout, and so sometimes that's not quite what you want. In our case, we can kind of get away with a render transform because the thing we want to spin is circular. So because it's kind of roundish, we can just make it go round and round and round. So we are going to do button content, and I'm going to pull this guy down, and we're going to do a material design pack icon. Oh, you had it there for a second. Refresh. Just because we want to set this guy up here. And then on this guy, we want to set up a render transform. So material design. Why are you freaking out? Oh, because I can't spell. There. Pack icon, render transform, and rotate transform, angle, and just for proof is in the pudding, right? If we go 90 degrees, gotta make it work though, right? So you can kind of see what it's going to end up doing, right? So we see angle, there's 90, there's 180, and it's oh, that's 1800. Yeah, there's 180, there's 0, there's 10. So 10 is probably a pretty good indication of what's going on, right? Is you can see it rotated, but it rotated about the top left-hand corner, the 0th point, rather than, right in the middle. What you can do is there is a render transform origin. And why this doesn't default to center, I don't know. but you can set it up. The render transform origin takes in a point in unit circle coordinates, so 0 to 1, and so half and 0.5 and 0.5 is dead center, right? So now when we do something like 90 degrees, rather than going all the way out, it's now rotated about the middle, and we can make fun spinny animations occur, right? So we got to give this guy a name. Refresh, rotate, transform, or something about like that, right? We'll turn those off. Okay, so let's see. So this guy here is going to be let's see, storyboard, target property. Let's see, that was angle, right? That we want to animate the angle properties to 0 to 359, and then and then I think we have to change the order of these properties around a little bit. This may not be necessary, but something in the back of my head is reminding me that I have to do this. And then we want to do storyboard target name, this guy. I can't remember if I have to do target name or if I have to do target, but we're going to try this, and this should go. And in the interest of making this interesting, I'm going to double it. Storyboard tree and style cannot specify target name. Remove target name. Oh, okay. Let's see. This guy here actually probably doesn't matter then, because we can come down here, because I only have it referenced once, and then do this, and then I don't need you referenced in here. I can put you down here, and then I can do that goes like that, that goes like that, and then that goes like that, and then we format accordingly. And then you no longer need a key, you just need a storyboard. This is where people get annoyed with WPF. Because this is arguably really deep and verbose and kind of obnoxious. Like, in order to do a double animation, I'm 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers deep. Target property cannot be set on style setter. Wait, what? Target name property. Where is the... I'm trying to remember the... we might have to go look. I do this so infrequently. WPF, storyboard, enter actions, begin storyboard. Yeah, just show me the reference all the way in. Where can you use it? Blah blah blah. How to apply it? Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. Begin storyboard. So you're doing it in an event trigger. Yeah, you did a double animation with a target name. I'm in a style, not an event trigger. You can use it as an alternative target name. It isn't serializable. There's no guarantee that target can be correctly referenced in the XAML. There is a target name. It is supposed to go on the animation. Indirect targeting. Where is... Do you not have... yeah. So... Multi-data trigger class example. That's... Sounds like what I want. Data trigger condition. Style trigger. Now, forgive me for not thinking that this is anything to do with the storyboard. Yeah, that is a bold-faced lie. Begin storyboard and a multi-data trigger. In a style, yes. Okay. Show me where this happens. Where are you? Animate in a style. You can use a storyboard to find the style similar to storyboard elsewhere. You don't specify a target name. The storyboard always targets the element in which the style is applied. Ah. Ah. There's the kicker. Okay. You must do indirect target for like fill.color. Okay, I don't care about that. Okay, so in order to do this here, I have applied this style at the wrong location. So what needs to happen then is this needs to go here, right? And I need to do this, and I need to do the style here, and I need to do a target type here, and I need to do a pack icon, and I need to do based on, and I need to do a static resource, and I need to do an X type, and then a pack icon. So for those people who haven't seen this syntax before, if you don't do the based on setup like this, you will drop the base style. But then the style should not target the button, but the icon, right? Yeah, exactly right. So what we're going to do is take this whole thing, yank it out, and plop it in here. And then we take this off, target property, and this we want to do render transform dot angle. So that should iterate through there. And then this guy here, we'll leave it like that for now. Okay. Oh! Did you see it spin? Did you see it spin? Ready? Spin. Now it only spun once, and that's more an indication of its repeat behavior isn't properly set. But it's working. It's working! It's working! Whatever. Now it's not stopping, so that's now another problem. But it's working. So the question being is it firing due to a missed hit? So I'm going to turn this off so that it doesn't. I want it to only proc when I click the button, and not when I switch to the tab, because I want to see it stopped. The binding triggered. Oh, then it stopped. Oh, maybe it was just a hot reload problem. Huh. Okay. Well, let's back out and put this back, because that seemed to work just fine. Come here. Yeah. Okay. So it must have just been a hot reload problem. Okay. Whew. Problem. Crisis averted. Crisis averted. Okay. So it spins. It's happy. That's clever. Let's clean this up a little bit real quick, because this is now kind of ugly. So I'm going to get rid of all this. And then we're going to come up here and go with style. And then we're going to leave just a little comment down here. All of this is just to make the icon inside of the button spin while we are loading. Boom! like I said, we're kind of cheating a little bit because of being able to make things line up, but there's a slight jump where it doesn't interpolate between. I want. Can I do 360? I don't know if it'll let me. I should check. Something in the back of my mind is telling me that I ran into weird things where when it hits 360, it reverses and runs all the way around. No, it's fine. Good. Okay, that way, because technically it gets around to 360 and then jumps to 0, but 0 and 360 render the same, so there's no visible thing. Cool. One second. I'm gonna switch this over and grab my repo, and we're gonna push this. Open a repo, dev. Spinning refresh icon. Okay. There's one more thing I'd like to at least get in and going real quick, is the idea of effectively wanting to close this out. Friend brings game back. I want him to drop off my list. Okay, so in this situation, I think where I expect to do it is on this list. Is I kind of want a button on each of these rows that gives me the ability to say, you know what, this has now been returned. Let's mark it as done. So let's do a data grid template column. So one comment I will make, in my opinion, is that the data grid is potentially one of the most complex controls to try and learn. So when people start using it right out of the gate, I usually twitch because it's hard. So if you are struggling with this, don't worry. It's because it is, in my opinion, the most complex of all of the controls possible inside of WPF. We have a view model, rental item view model. So I'm going to move you into your own file. Okay, so we're going to go here and let's do type rental item view model. And then inside of here, I just want to slap in a data template, stop it, button, content, how about mark, return. All right, so command, binding, return command. Okay, so now what we need is a return command. So we come over here, and here is what I meant, clearly. And we go partial. And we come in here, and we go relay command, public async task on return. Right? So now this is where people oftentimes get really hung up. Is we've now gotten ourselves into this situation where I've got one of these thingies. I would like to go through and change something about it in the database. But how do I do that? Right? There's not always a clear way of doing it. Well, step one, in order to update an item in the database, we're going to need to know about its ID. So rental ID. So inside of the constructor, but you have to give it a type because that's how C# works. Let's see. Rental ID gets rental ID. Poof. Okay, perfect. So now we've got that. The next problem that we have is this guy has no concept of a DB context. Right, so we probably need to actually feed that in. Board game context. Sure. And then we're going to create an assigned property. And let's just private these things up because we don't actually need these. Right? And so now we actually have enough information where we can go board game context, rentals, and then we can go, let's see, do we pull it out and just update it? It's probably the easiest. Yeah, so we could hold on to this object and then just feed it back in. let's query it out back again. I think, yeah, let's just pull it back out. Find async, and then we're going to feed it rental ID. Worth noting, this takes a params array, so if you do have a composite key that you set up, that works. But we're going to pattern match this guy. So if this is rental, because hypothetically something could delete it. I guess we do this maneuver. Let's see. So we're going to go with found rental dot, oh, gotta wait this thing. Found rental, let's see, returned on, no, returned on gets date time now. Really? Okay, Copilot, you're just gonna do the thing. Okay, great. So if we go here, oh, right, so if we don't pass in our new parameter, that's going to be a problem. So context could be good to introduce data access class. Yeah, and this is actually a good point to do it. Though the one thing I'm wanting to get at is the refresh of the list problem that's going to come up. Right? So right now, this list of rentals only shows us pending ones. Right? Because we've intentionally filtered down to returned on. Now when I click this mark returned, and I'm going to put a breakpoint just so we can prove that it comes in here, right? So I click it, we come in here, we do the needful, we set returned on, it has a thing, we persist it to the database, right? Nothing's changed, right? Visually, as far as the user's concerned, nothing's changed, right? I can hit refresh, and now my list is empty, but until I did that refresh. And so this is a very common problem that you run into where you've got an action that occurs in one spot and somewhere else that needs to know about it, right? And there's two ways in WPF to deal with this. Option one is you have some sort of object that's maintaining the state that's shared in both places, right? Event aggregator is coming. Yes. So a shared object holding state is one option, right? A DB context shared between two places can work. That's the whole idea of binding to that local collection, because if you share that in multiple places, if one changes, then it updates elsewhere. And that's the idea. That idea of a shared state object can work, but I think it only works in specific situations, and it's not a general purpose pattern that you should strive to follow, right? Insisting that two things that need to know about events have to have some sort of shared object is a pattern that it could work if there's already a reasonable location where that should be happening, but in a lot of cases it's just not there, right? So event aggregator, definitely. Inside of the community toolkit, they have a built-in pub submodel, so publish subscribe pattern that is underneath the iMessenger interface. And I completely skimmed over it when we started, but my default template actually goes through and registers up one for you. So the performance of the iMessenger is absolutely insane. They published out some performance benchmarks where they got their allocations down to near zero, and my mind went, I was shocked. So this thing is highly performant, which is really cool. There are two variants that come in the library, a weak reference one and a strong reference one. And the idea being that you have to register for the messages that you want to receive. And when you register with the messenger and say, hey, yeah, I'd like to know when this thing happens, do you want the messenger holding a weak reference to you or a strong reference to you? That's your choice, right? So in our case, I generally prefer weak reference messengers because I like to treat it more like a Blackboard pattern rather than something that's going to be keeping things alive, because this thing is registered as a singleton, and if everybody's talking to it, it becomes real easy to leak. So I usually prefer a weak reference where that gets cleaned up. So the nice part is this is already built for us, which is wonderful, right? So in an ideal situation, this guy comes in and we go, oh, what I would like is a messenger, right? and then I go through and hold the messenger, and then make him private because he doesn't need to be exposed anywhere. And then down here, we're gonna just create a new, well, we'll just do it down here. Public record class. Let's see. Rentals updated. We're gonna make it a real simple message. Or how about rental updated? And we'll actually pass the rental as a payload. Right? So I'm using a record class because they're quick and easy. This could be any class. You get to pick your message type, right? So down here, then we go messengers. Dang, Navi, you Copilot. Yes, that's what I want. Spoilers. Now, we're also running into another kind of common problem that shows up a lot. Is we now have added another parameter to this view model class. Right, and this is one of this type of pattern is what starts to bite people really quick when they're building WPF and they go, oh, it's too hard, and they throw up their hands. I don't think it's too hard. I think there's just a few things that people need to know. Is now that we've got this iMessenger, it's like, oh crap. In order to get the iMessenger all the way into this guy, well, shoot. Now this guy needs to take in the iMessenger, right? This guy takes in the iMessenger. And then we got to cache this guy into another property ourselves. And then down here, we have to actually pass it all the way in and yada, yada, yada. And so you can get yourself into these situations like we're only 2 levels deep. But I've seen apps where it's many levels deep. And it's like, oh, shoot, the thing at the base level needs access to this thingy. Shoot, I got to plumb that thing all the way in. If you run into that situation, there is likely a problem with the architecture somewhere in that chain. And right here, the architecture problem that we're running into is this constructor, right? There's an old phrase, new is glue, meaning these two things are glued together. They are tightly coupled, and that is bad because constructors in C# are basically static methods, right? They're static methods that just happen to give you back an instance of the object when you're done. Now, that's a kind of an interesting way to think about it because then we can kind of solve the same problem. So what we are saying is this view model, what he really needs is the ability to create one of these things. And we want him to be able to create one of these things by passing in a rental. These other things we don't care too much about. DI container, you go ahead and resolve those for me, right? That's what we would really like. Because your constructor arguments, some people will refer to them as an object's dependencies, right? These are the things that your object depends on in order to be able to do its job properly. This guy depends on the ability to be able to create this thing, right? He doesn't necessarily need to be coupled. He really doesn't care that much. If he's able to create this, problem solved, right? So another alternative in here, right? Is to go through and the generalized pattern is a factory, right? If you want to hunt around on the Bings and the Googles, that's a factory pattern is what you probably want to start your hunting with. But we can actually get a little cheekier with it and abuse delegates, right? So what we can do is we can say, okay, I have a func. I want my func to take in a rental, and I want it to give me back a rental item view model, right? Rental view model factory, right? We could go through and create an interface and create a class. That's a thing we could do, right? And then the generalized pattern, when you look up a factory pattern, that's what you will see is people actually go and write a factory class with a method that's going to have a signature that looks like this, and they do it, right? That's the generalized pattern. You can do that, right? If this sort of shorthand doesn't work, fall back to the full pattern, you'll be fine, right? But this gets a little bit easier, right? So we'll just private that thing up. Because now what I do is I do rental item factory, and rather than calling the new glue, I just invoke this guy instead. I pass in my rental, and I get back my view model, right? So now the question is, where does this magical func come from? Well, in order for that to work, we actually have to register it up, right? So we will do, because you'll note we DI registered our other top level view models, but we never DI registered this rental item view model because the DI container was never actually resolving it. No one was ever asking in their constructor parameter for a rental item view model. It's because that thing wasn't ever a dependency of anything else, but the creation of it could be a dependency, right? So what we will do is we will add, that's not add a singleton of, wow, okay, I can't type, more Mountain Dew. We'll add a singleton here, right? This will take in a rental. We'll return back a rental item view model. And so we will do rental lambda, or I'm sorry, this is service provider. Wow, that was a lot of typing. Okay, so in the DI container, when you register a singleton, there is an overload to add singleton that takes in a lambda instead. And so here what we will do is we will return a new rental item view model. And here we will then take in a rental. Wait, something like that. Okay. Let's see. Add singleton func rental item view model, right? What's your problem? I'll type you for the moment. I'll get you in a minute. So this guy becomes rental, but now we have to resolve the dependencies. But because we have access to our service provider, we can say, no, I don't want to think too hard, right? Service provider, get required service. Let's see. Board game con BOARD. There we go. I'm going to just new line indent these suckers because that's getting too long. Service provider, get required service, iMessenger. Right? So now I have created what I will call a loose factory or a lightweight factory. Right? I'm registering a delegate that is able to resolve my view model for me and create it for me. And now this guy doesn't need to care. Right? He can just ask nicely and go through and get it. Now, the convenient part is we had a messenger here, and we kind of need this messenger, right? We previously had this messenger here for the purposes of passing it in, but we don't need to actually cache this messenger. What we need to do instead is we need to register up for the event in question, right? So one of the easiest ways to do it is an iRecipient and the payload type or the message type that you want to see, rental updates. Okay, boom. I want to do that. Give me a method, and then on my messenger, I will do messenger register all. There. That goes in here, and then when this message is received, we will do on refresh. Now you'll know on refresh is an async method. This is a void returning method. I will posit that this is the equivalent of a top level event handler, and therefore should be an async void. But all the same warnings of async void that came along before, watch out for exceptions, that kind of thing, that still applies. But now when we go through and click the button, he will update the database. He will post a message. This guy will receive the message, and then he will promptly refresh the list. Okay, so we go here. There should be nothing in here. Good. So we'll do a new rental, and we are going to rent out games to Foo because reasons. If I come here, should repop. Okay, Foo has now done it. If we mark this, mark returned, boom. Yeah, you're right. You do not need a payload. Specifically, the comment being made is, I am posting this message, and this message currently contains the rental object itself inside of it, and that's not being used. So, correct. We don't need it. I'm secretly putting it in there because I have thoughts of where I will probably need it in the future. Now, Yagni, you ain't gonna need it. We could probably burn it down. Actually, you know what? Let's do that. No, I'm going to leave it there because I'm using this app a little bit as an example for people, and I think showing people how you can send arbitrary data as part of a payload is useful. I should probably have a better example, but this is one thing I've seen people get hung up on is they don't understand that messages, like you can build them up however you want, and they contain data, right? And poof, away we go, which is much, much more wonderful. Okay, so one thing I did want to check on, though, is maybe not refresh then. Yeah, there's probably a better sample to go through and do. I suspect building up more of this will probably lend itself well to other things. Like, for example, on the new one, when you click the save button, we should probably be clearing that stuff out. Right? So one thing I'm noticing here right away is the alignment of all of this stuff is kind of crap. Obviously, the games column is empty. That's a thing to deal with. But the alignment of this other stuff is kind of yucky. Ideally, I would like the height of this button to not be so big, these things to be vertically aligned, not to be so much margin around there. So let's take a look at how we fix that, right? Boom, boom, boom. Add method, remove item from list. Yeah, that's I suspect where we're going to land, though that one may end up landing on the game catalog page. Okay, so let's start with these ones here. Right, so for those people, and maybe I'll go back and show it again. For those people who have never seen Snoop, I highly recommend Snoop. It is by far one of the best apps you can have if you're doing any sort of WPF work. Let's see, Snoop WPF GitHub, made by a wonderful man, Bastian Schmidt, and he is awesome. You can download the tool here. It's also available via Chocolatey, Winget, blah 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 blah. Okay. Snoop, though, has a somewhat unintuitive interface. You grab the crosshairs next to your binoculars, drag them over the app you care about, release, and poof, you get this window over here. This window now allows you to inspect the UI structure of your app. And the magical keystroke to know about is Control-Shift. When you hold down Control-Shift, that little red box will chase whatever element is directly under your cursor. And so it's a quick, easy way. You can see my tree over here is just bouncing all over as it moves around. But it's a very easy way for me to go through and do it. Now, it will only jump to hit testable elements. So if there's like an invisible element or something, you probably aren't going to get it, and you're going to have to navigate a little on the tree. But it can usually get you, at minimum, pretty close. The other big thing that it lets you do is it lets you actually muck with your properties and test things out ahead of time. So it's very similar to the visual tree that's built into Visual Studio. Visual Studio's tree has the live visual tree, this thing right here. The one advantage its visual tree has over Snoop is it has these little buttons here that can jump you right to the XAML file. That's the one thing Visual Studios has on it. Snoop has everything else. Better inspection, better manipulating of properties, access to the data context, being able to monitor events, triggers, behaviors, being able to invoke arbitrary methods on both your data context as well as your UI elements. There's a lovely little PowerShell thing if you want to go all crazy mode and write PowerShell against your visual tree. Yeah, so Visual Studios can navigate you to the XAML files. Snoops can do everything else. Okay, so vertical alignment. So this guy here, the big issue is the text box that's being rendered inside of here is setting the vertical alignment to stretch, which is causing it to fill, and then the text gets up the top. Now we could also do stretch because this is a text block. Oh, there isn't the text alignment set up for it. So what we really would like to do is get that thing centered. So if we come back over here, the big issue is that this is all we've set up, right? We've just done the data grid text column. And again, this is one of those cases where I will argue that the data grid is very complex, despite what some people will think. So if we do data grid element style, right? We can come in here. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's getting really close. Okay, so style, target type, text block. We're going to once again do the based on and make sure that we appropriately set the based on to fall back to the style one, because if you don't, you'll drop the material design styling. You are so close. Setter property. We just saw vertical alignment, value center. Boom. There we go. And we see this guy now drops in and lines up. We want to end up duplicating this on the other one. And I think that this is one of those areas on my Simply Budget app where it got very confusing in a lot of the XAML. Is I spent a great deal of time, not necessarily in a data grid, but in a, was it a data grid or is it a list view? One of the two, but tweaking the columns and positions to get everything lined up and looking the way that I wanted. Because again, it's built for my one target user, which is me. So it looks and works exactly the way I want. Not meant for general consumption, but if you use it, great, have fun. So this type of thing quickly will take what used to be a very simple data grid, because we started with one row with auto-generate columns, and just to get everything lined up perfectly got us to here. Okay, so let's see here. The other thing is this, the height of this row is kind of big, and it's largely being driven in size by this button, right? So if we jump over here to the button and we go up here, right? So if we were to take the visibility of this button and just say collapse it, right? The height of my row drops. So the button is definitely what is triggering it, or at least something about the button. Now, I have a suspicion it's margin or padding around it. So here's the other thing. You can do this maneuver and you can quickly start figuring out, oh, okay, where are these things located? You'll also note that on each of these, Snoop is kind enough to also show you attached properties as well. So we can kind of guess a little bit. Is we see this button has a padding of 1644, but that's the internal side of it, so it's probably not there. This guy here, even though these are attached properties only will modify the relevant padding property when they get put somewhere. But I do see this data grid assist cell padding, so I'm immediately kind of suspect that one of these two is going to be problematic. So we're going to keep walking up, and the fact that it's called cell padding makes me want to just go immediately look at the cell, and I look at the padding and I go, ah, there we are, 1686. Hypothetically, if that were, I don't know, 0, look at that, flattens right up for me. So data grid cell padding is probably what I would like to set on this particular cell. And I think what I can do is I can probably just set this right at the root of this guy. So data grid assist, cell padding 0. And that offset it the wrong way because that applied to everybody. So we probably don't want it there. What we probably want to do then is come down to our button template, and I don't know if I can apply it at the column level and expect to get anything out of it, because I need it to hit the cell, not the cell template. So I probably have to go with the element style and hit it higher. So let's go data grid, cell template. Do you not have a style to get at the outside? Cell style, there it is. Yeah, so this is something else that, again, also makes it challenging, is the cell template is the thing inside the cell. The style is a property on the outer control of the cell, but because we can get access to the cell style, we can then muck with it. Let's see, data grid cell. And I don't think there's a base style worth deriving from. So we're going to do that. And then we're going to do a setter property. And then to do the attach property, I believe we're going to need parens on it, but I could be wrong. Okay. Looks like it's happy. So we're gonna relaunch because we've mucked with enough stuff in Snoop and the live editing that I don't trust it anymore. Come over here. Loading. Maybe I should dial that down. Okay, that looks much better. These things, the height of my rows are no longer huge. The text is now vertically centered. I'm happier with this. And you'll note I very intentionally did not set a header on this guy. And I think I want to do a can user sort false because it doesn't really make sense to sort by the button column, right? You can sort by the date or the person or the games even, but sorting by that just doesn't make sense. Cool. Okay, so that cleans that up. Let's see here. Let's go with Messenger and adding and UI cleanup of the grid. We'll do that. Push. Okay, one last thing I think I'm going to do before I probably turn into a pumpkin and fall asleep is down on here. We've got this idea of when we've added this thing in, and it might be nice to go through and actually, like, say, clear out the UI, right? The simplest thing to do is once we get past save changes, right? Loan 2, clear the string out. Darn you, Copilot. Copilot really is the kid in the back of the class going, actually, I know what you're supposed to... Shut up, Copilot. You're spoiling the lesson. No one likes you, except for me. Well, kind of. Okay, right? So we can go in here, we can type foo again, we can hit save. It clears it out. It might be nice to provide some acknowledgement to the user that we've actually, like, you know, done something. So there's a couple ways to go about doing this. One of my personal favorites is I enjoy the snack bar type control, right? So if we go and look here and we go with snack bar, let's see. I think this one, yeah. So this one doesn't. Do you not have the? There is low contrast on the text box title. Let's focus. Yeah, I do. We should clean that up too while we're here. We'll go and adjust it. I think that's just an artifact of my theming colors that I've picked. Okay. Yeah, sure. So this is what we want. So let's put on this guy here a little snack bar notification to let the user know, hey, you know, your thing has been saved, right? We're clearing the text box, but that's not really that nice to do to them. So what we are going to do down here, and I think we've already got a message queue registered. Yeah, we've got a message queue registered. And you'll note every single instance of this guy is transient, so he's going to be getting a new one. And all of that is built up nicely and wonderful. So we will come into here and we will do a snack bar message queue, right? And we'll go down here and we'll do, we should actually put this, persist this somewhere, right? Do that. Have the null check for paranoia, and then we'll go message queue, NQ. For now, we'll just do, you know, saved. Boom, done. Right? There's overloads for the message queue for like a close button, all kinds of stuff. But for now, we're gonna keep it simple. String will work. And then we're gonna come here, and we are going to, rather than just using a built-in queue, we are going to bind to the one in the view model. Message queue, boop de bop de boom, done. And let's do this guy as vertical alignment bottom. I don't know where he's set by default, so we're just gonna anchor him at the bottom and keep him there. And that should at least get that much added. So we're gonna go here, foo, save, huzzah, right? Little snack bar. Little pop-up. It's kind of long, but I think part of it was my mouse was over it. We might dial this down. There's overloads so that you can change the duration per message if you want, but I think I'm just going to dial the global one down to 2 seconds and call it a day. Okay, so let's deal with the heading, the top. I wish you'd stay where I want you, because this thing here, that contrast, you are absolutely correct, is ugly. And I think what we're looking for is we'd like to dial it down to where it's using the light one, because it looks like it's using the mid brush, if I was guessing. So if we come here, you'll note I've done this. I'm going to type in some letters so it doesn't move when I change focus over to here. And then what I'd like to do is go to the foreground property, right? So you can see it's material design body, but when I go here, you can see its primary hue mid brush is what is actually being set. Now, I think, let's go here. Most of these things are going to be around, if it's the hint stuff, it's probably here, and foreground, and we're going to do a dynamic resource, and then let's do light foreground instead and see what that looks like. What? That's not the color we wanted. Let's see. Oh, that's right. So that's the wrong color. Cut that out for a moment, because it was primary hue mid, primary hue light brush, I believe is what we want. Primary hue light brush. There, that's a little better in terms of showing it up. I'm gonna just move Snoop off of it so that it looks a little better. That is a little nicer. We could even go something more aggressive, but that's probably fine for now. So the other thing to be aware of is the Material Design 5.0 release. There's going to be a significant brush upheaval of changing, and all of these brushes are going to become easier to set on a case-by-case basis without needing to worry what you're changing, right? So rather than there being the one brush, there will be one that is specific to like hint assist, foreground, or similar. So it's going to be much nicer. And when people ask, hey, can we change color X? The answer will be either here's the brush name for that, or let me add a specific brush for that. And then the problem goes away. So that cleans that up. We close Snoop and we close this window, I believe kills that. Yep. And then we've got here and a little spinny. We can mark returned. Oh, interesting. When we marked returned, it did the refresh, but didn't trigger the spinner. Wonder why that. Oh, because it's not going through the command; it's going to the method directly. Got it. We want to force things to go through the command so that they properly trigger that. So this should be refresh command execute async null, because going to the method directly is fine, but it won't give you that is loading spinner. Okay, let's try again. Okay, let's put some ones in here. There, go here. There it loads. There we go. Cool. Look at that. Look at that. We got a little database app going. It's such a cute little database app. Okay, I'm going to also go turn topmost off on this, just so people don't think that topmost is the way you should be running your apps. I'm only doing it for demo purposes, but we will commit and push this. Let's see here. Save notification. Cleaned up hint color. Turned off topmost. Yeah, great. There, push. So there it is. There we go. We'll probably play on this a little more, but I'm hoping to get it built out so it's, I want to have a little more full-featured WPF app as a sample for people to look at. And I don't think my Simply Budget app, even though that's where I started, is going to be a good one. I think there's just too much complexity that goes into anything dealing with money to make it. There's extra considerations and everything in here, and this is a little more lightweight and a little bit easier to follow. So hopefully that was useful. I think I hit a lot of the common pain points, or at least highlights. I realized that was a complete whirlwind tour of all things ready, set, go. Let's make a brand new WPF app. But like I said, I know I've had several people asking about various versions of, hey, can you walk through making a new app? How would you do it? And I wanted to have at least some video that pointed people in the right direction. Again, if you're looking for more information, some things I would probably recommend following up on if you're unfamiliar with it. My video on the CommunityToolkit.MVVM with all of its source generators. The 8.0 release one, it will give you the vast majority. There's been some improvements in the 8.1 and 8.2 stuff, but the real meat and potatoes is that 8.0 one. And then, as always, feel free to hit me up with more questions that you have. But thank you, everyone, for coming and hanging out. Appreciate all the interactions and questions and new subscribers. So I'll tell everyone happy coding. We'll see y'all next time.